Hey everybody, this is Cameron from Obnoxious and Anonymous, and welcome to the Twin Peaks Thought of the Day for Saturday, January 12th, 2019. My guest today is Jeremiah from Take the Ring. How's it going?
Great. How you doing?
Doing great. So the last video we did, a lot of people liked it, a lot of people enjoyed it. Although we got one comment from Kirsten, who is used to this show sort of engaging with the chat room when we go live, and the last two videos you and I hadn't done that, and it wasn't so much that I wanted to ignore the chat. It was usually there is sort of an engagement back and forth with everybody, but when I had you on the show, I thought it'd be fun to kind of just let our discussions take us further down the rabbit hole, as opposed to getting into a good discussion, looking at the chat and going off into another direction, which often happens. And it's great. I love it. But I wanted to just try something a little different, because then that would allow the chat board to kind of talk amongst themselves as well as about the topics we were getting into. A lot of people like that format. A lot of people may, not like it. Some people might be, hey, as long as you go back and forth, that's cool. So today, I thought it would be great to talk with you about everything Twin Peaks and David Lynch. And then we're also going to take your questions and comments in the chat. So if you have anything you want to ask us or talk to us about, throw it in the chat. We will address it today. I did put the call out on Twitter, on Facebook. Nothing. Nobody apparently has a question or comment for us. So hopefully you guys do. Otherwise, this is going to be a very long and not so informative video. But let's see who we have here today, because we have nearly 30 people watching us live right now. So we have Danielle here, Carl's here, Tony's here, Richard's here, Thomas is here, Charlie's here, and Kirsten. So she's here to make sure we stay on track and engage with the chat board today. So, all right, Jeremiah, why don't you start it off? What's something you would like to discuss right off the bat?
I'm sure you're sick of talking about it, but I want your 2-minute take on Dune, because you and I have never talked about it. So I'm just curious what you've probably talked ad nauseum about it, but I don't know what you think about it. So if you could sum it up in 2 minutes, what you got to say about Dune?
I saw Dune really early as a child, probably around 85, once it came out on VHS. Didn't know anything about David Lynch. I sat down thinking, oh, this is gonna be like Star Wars. It's not like Star Wars. So I kind of just well, I don't really understand this, and I just kind of stayed away from it. And then of course, after seeing Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks was on the air, it was funny because all of a sudden when Twin Peaks blew up, right when it first came out, there was TV stations playing Dune. It's like we're going to capitalize on this David Lynch phenomenon happening. And so I was like, they're gonna show Dune over 2 nights, and I thought this is gonna be amazing, right? Because I was like, I remember seeing when I was a little kid, but didn't really care for it. Now I'm ready. I know the David Lynch aesthetic. I'm right there. And then it begins, and it says screenplay by Judas Booth and directed by Alan Smithy. And again, I'm a young kid, so I'm thinking, well, David Lynch had nothing to do with this movie, because I don't know anything about aliases and things like that. So I'm like, they keep saying David Lynch has something to do with this movie. I don't see David Lynch's name at all in this movie. But I had friends that taped it as well, and I liked portions of it. I liked the fact that there was a lot of Twin Peaks actors and people from Blue Velvet in and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I went over to one of my mom's friend's house, we were house sitting, and they had Dune on VHS. And I thought, oh, I turned it over and flipped it, and it said screenplay and directed by David Lynch. I'm like, okay, this is really bizarre. So I sat down and watched it. And what's funny is that David Lynch completely disowns that movie. Talks about you didn't have final cut, et cetera, et cetera. But there is so much of him still in the film. So much so that he even makes a cameo in the theatrical cut. He is completely cut out of the extended cut, which I thought was interesting. So it, in a way, the theatrical cut may not be David Lynch's preferred version of it, but it is the most David Lynch like. I think the extended cut, which is something he did disown, is better on a story level. You can follow it a little more clearer. But I think a lot of the Lynchisms or whatever were kind of toned down in that extended cut, which is interesting considering they were promoting that version as David Lynch presents Dune. So I do like it for what it is. I think there's a lot of talent and there's a lot of artistry in it. I still wish that he could go back with the elements and, you know, throw out his official version of it, regardless of length. You know, the home video doesn't really matter anymore in terms of length, right? Like Kingdom of Heaven, right? Ridley Scott puts out almost a 4-hour cut of it with a prologue and an intermission and all that stuff. So why not? I mean, I know he wants to, you know, he's done with it. He's moved on, but he went back and completed the missing pieces. He went back and, you know, did the Blue Velvet deleted scenes. You know, maybe go back and do the Dune deleted scenes, the version, the scenes he wants us to see. You know, I don't know if the, you know, De Laurentiis estate would be up for that, but they probably would because it would be more money for them. I think if David Lynch came out and put out a new cut of Dune that he approved of, I really do believe it would be a huge bestseller for the physical media and the streaming. And I think, you know, because all of those David Lynch fanatics out there will just buy it up.
Yeah.
You know, they'll never happen. But if I was Sabrina Sutherland, that would be something I would kind of be whispering in his ear, like, or at least putting the feelers out there to the De Laurentiis estate to see, like, if David Lynch wakes up in the morning and thinks, wouldn't it be fun to go in the editing bay and play around with Dune? Is it possible?
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So Carl said, he said 2-minute take, Cameron. Well, I want to give some backstory, Carl. So anyway, I mean, obviously you're a big fan of Dune.
Yeah, so I guess as fast as I can explain it, I saw part of the movie. It was playing at a video store when I was a kid, and yeah, I was probably like he was into Star Wars and all that stuff, and I was like, oh, this looks kind of cool. And they had the blue, it was the scene in the cave, and then the blue eyes, and the sandworm was out there and all that, and it's like, oh man, this looks cool. And I don't know, for whatever reason, my parents weren't too hyped on it or heard that it was bad. I don't know. So anyway, we just ended up never renting it, but I ended up seeing it on TV shortly after, and I loved it. And then got a little older, and I read the book, and I had the PC game, and I really liked the story and everything about it. And then the fact that it's David Lynch was kind of a coincidence. Like, I didn't love Dune. I didn't, you know, that connection didn't come till later, till I was like, you know, in high school and watching Twin Peaks and stuff. And then it was like, oh, okay, he did Dune. And I guess as far as the movie itself, like, I do believe it's flawed in a lot of ways. I do basically, I don't know. It's definitely a flawed movie, but I still love it. There's definitely Lynch stuff in there that's good. I know the book fairly well, and it's the irony of my take on Dune is that it got slagged so bad, even by Dune fans at the time, for being a bad adaptation of the book. And like 20 years later, reading the book a couple times, seeing the movie a whole bunch of times, like, it's not a bad, like, to take the story that big and try to make it into a movie. He did a pretty good job, and he made cuts and changes, like kind of like how Peter Jackson did Lord of the Rings. Like, they were smart changes, I think. I just think there's little things like the inner dialogue. So there's always that inner monologue crap, and it's like, it's cool because it's in the book, and it's Lynchian because it's in the mind. I just think that it takes you out of certain scenes at times, and I don't know. I could go on forever
Well,
about why that movie's not
because it
great.
feels like voiceover rather than their thoughts.
Yes, yes, and the timing, yeah. So there's a bunch of little stuff as to why it's not good. However, like that, the new Blu-ray that came out, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago or whatever, like it was cheap, and it's a great transfer, and it looks great, and I mean the story itself, and the costumes and the worms and stuff. I mean, obviously for people that can still handle, practical effects and whatnot. I mean, all the effects aren't great, but I mean,
But the makeup
it's
effects on like Baron Harkonnen is like straight David Lynch.
yeah, and all that's added. That's not in the book. He's not. I don't. I mean, he's a big. He's like super duper fat, and he's got the elevated machine that kind of like keeps him floating around. But if I'm thinking right, the scarred face, and spitting on Jessica, and the heart
Rip.
plug on that
Yeah.
guy, and like all that shit is totally Lynch. The like vaginal mouth of the
Guild
guild
Navigator.
navigator thing, like
Well, the
that's
Guild Navigator itself looks like the Eraserhead baby grown up.
exactly right. Yeah, so the guild navigator totally is Lynch. um I liked it because it's actually kind of like those movies used to be. Like they like PG movies were actually could be kind of violent. So like uh it's a bit more. I know they were going for kind of the Return of the Jedi audience, I believe, but it's definitely a little gory and over the top, and I can see why it turned people off. I don't think it's as bad as people think that it is. I agree that it's flawed, but I still
I think
love
the
it.
I think the problem is that it builds up and then the third act like comes real quick and then it's over. I think
Yeah,
if it had been they weren't thinking like this back then, but if it had been a Lord of the Rings thing where they did 3 films, I mean that would
yeah,
have completely backfired in their face, but it would have allowed them the space to tell that story. One part like even like the Lynch, there's so many Lynchian touches in it. Like every time I watch Dune, the opening scene, like there's like in the background there's a guy walking like 25 dogs.
yeah.
You know
Oh
that,
yeah,
come on, that's not in the book. I mean, that's just a Lynchian
yeah,
touch. Just like at the beginning of the Straight Story, when he shows like the downtown area and you see like 8 dogs just running down the street. It's like it's little touches like that, but it gives you that lived in feeling, and it's a bit of an oddity, but it's not something that is an impossibility either. But every time I watch Dune, I'm struck that David Lynch never worked with Virginia Madsen again, because if you look at her career, it's tailor made to be working with David Lynch. I mean, you look at Candyman and a few of her other films. She's a quality actress.
yeah. I agree.
And I wish that that she would have maybe had a chance to work with him more,
Yeah, I
because she does
yeah,
that opening narration is so great. The planet is Arrakis, also known as Dune.
yeah,
she tucks her head down and says it's great.
yeah. And then then she says something, and then it fades out, and it's just the space, and then she comes back. It's like, oh, also I forgot to tell you. I'm
Love
like,
it, love it.
who the hell does that in the opening Like, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just funny.
I love that though. The
I
idea
know.
of her fading out and then coming back. Oh, I forgot to tell you something. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. It's just it's got that definitely like Lynch oddness to it. I think. I mean, but like that's the thing. It's like for everything, like just kind of like you and I were talking the other day about Inland Empire or whatever. But like I can. I still like it. Like it's still as cheesy it can be, or whatever your criticisms of it. Like, man, it's still like way better than a lot of like new stuff. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as people think it is.
I
But
think that
I'm not making the argument that it's great though. But I
but
think
there
people
will be revisionism coming, because once the new version of Dune comes out in the theater, good or bad, there's going to be think pieces doing the compare and contrast of, you know, Dune, David Lynch's version versus what's his name, the guy who did Blade Runner.
Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah, they're gonna do whole, you know, the whole thing, like they did with in '97 when Adrian Lyne released his version of Lolita, and they were comparing it to Kubrick and all that. They're just gonna do that. The Nightman Cometh is in the chat, and he says, wasn't Lynch advised he should direct Dune by his manager to further his career since he didn't want to direct Return of the Jedi? The funny thing is that David Lynch thought that he was being offered a movie called June. And so he didn't know what it was. And then he got sent the book and it said Dune. So it's kind of funny here. But I mean, would you say this is I don't know, this is a blasphemous question or not? Considering that Dune got taken away by Lynch and all that, although there is a happy ending to it because, you know, De Laurentiis did, you know, strip, or he didn't, Lynch didn't have final cut anyway, but, you know, Dune kind of blew up in their faces and all that. But Dino De Laurentiis is the one who came back and said, I'll fund Blue Velvet for you because of this whole mess.
Yeah.
So without Dune, there is no Blue Velvet.
Right, exactly. So I mean, it's also kind of a necessary in David Lynch's career. It's a lot of great artists have to have a moment like to reevaluate things. Like that was the moment, the failure or his disappointment with Dune. Yeah, it led to Laurentiis funding Blue Velvet. That's when he made up his mind, I will always have final cut. That's when he made up his mind to try not to be involved with the big studio system and try to do small films that are his vision. Like basically, obviously everyone or lots of people like Eraserhead, and The Elephant Man was great. But
Dune set him off on a path that he has not broken free from yet.
And defines his work, you know? It's kind of like, well, I definitely know what I don't want to do. And then from that, we got most of the stuff that we remember him for, you know?
Well, without Blue Velvet, if he had not made Blue Velvet at that time, right? You know, he wouldn't have cast Kyle, and then Twin Peaks wouldn't have been made. And so it just kind of, everything, you know, just leads into itself. And because, you know, having this discussion is interesting because you could make an argument point, which was the worst film for Lynch's career, Dune or Inland Empire? It's like on a personal level, Inland Empire is great in terms of you know, artistic freedom and playing around with the video camera and all that. But like we were talking about before, Inland Empire is the only film that Lynch has ever made that lost money. And,
right.
and it was made very cheaply.
Yeah,
but Dune still made money. Dune, you know, I mean, Dune has made a lot of money since even the theatrical run with the videos and the DVDs and Blu-rays, and people catching on who David Lynch is. They all go back and buy, especially because it's not just David Lynch directing Dune. Yeah. It's David Lynch directing Kyle MacLachlan and Everett McGill and Dean Stockwell and, you know, all these other people in Dune. So it's got that whole kind of niche thing within the Twin Peaks Blue Velvet community, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's interesting. It's like Inland Empire, what that, now again, I know sometimes we talk negatively about Inland Empire. Again, if Criterion put it out tomorrow, I'd be the first person buying it.
Me too.
But what did Inland Empire bring to David Lynch? 10 years of silence. What did Dune bring to David Lynch? A year later, we get Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
So I could make the argument that Inland Empire was a worse film for David Lynch to be making.
Yeah, to be associated with. It's just, it's so funny, like just the, I agree with you with what you're saying. That's a good argument, and I never really thought about it that way. I just, do you know what I guess I'm like just out of touch with people nowadays. When I think about Dune, I instantly think about all the criticisms from back then. Like fans of the book said it wasn't as good as the book. You know, some of the acting choices or whatever. I don't know why, but certain people didn't. A lot of people didn't like it. I don't think it did well at the box office. It didn't do terrible, but it definitely wasn't.
Well, one of the coolest things that they did for Dune, which I I think Kubrick did it before Clockwork Orange as well, but Dune definitely did it, which was when critics came to the screening, right? They were
Mhm.
handed a glossary upon entering
Yes,
the theater.
yes, I heard about this. Right, right.
Which people like say, well, I shouldn't need to read this before understanding the movie. But to me, I feel like that's kind of another Lynch quirkiness. It's not I mean, yeah, it's probably a studio thing too, but I don't know. To me, I would find that charming to be given a glossary.
I would love to have one of those. That'd be sweet. Um, but yeah, what do you think people think about it now? Because the criticisms back then, the book fans didn't like it, movie fans didn't like it. Lynch was unhappy with it. Then when they put it out on TV, like what you watched was it's
Extended cut.
basically for people that don't know, it's a 4 hour cut of Dune, basically.
Which is available on DVD in North America. They did release a DVD that has both cuts.
No,
Yeah.
really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. So I bought that at a comic when I was maybe 12 or 13. I bought
This is it right here. The Steel book, and
yeah.
you get both versions of it.
Oh,
So
sweet.
you can probably find this for like $3 on Amazon right now.
But the extended cut doesn't have a Blu-ray release.
No.
Okay, because I have the Blu-ray of that, and it's the same artwork.
Right.
It's just Blu-ray, and
the Blu-ray also cuts out the trailers, which I love. I love the trailers for Dune.
Yeah. Oh, there's no trailers on that?
No, they cut them out from the Blu-ray.
So, I bought a bootleg two VHS tape copy of the bootleg at a comic book convention when I was a kid. And that's how I saw the extended cut. And it was the same. It was like Alan Smithy, you know. And then you had to read like, oh, he was mad about it, and so when they did this extended cut, and again for people that don't know, the extended cut has like a longer opening with kind of like storyboards and still images to try to get you more of the background to make some of this stuff a little less confusing. And it's got some of the battles are extended, right? And I can't remember much. I mean, there's a subplot. Go ahead.
I don't know. Yeah, no, we were getting a lot of comments and questions about it.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
Tony says Inland Empire is a more personal work like Eraserhead. Of course, no one's arguing that. Dune's flaws were unintentional. Inland Empire was an intentional experiment. Yeah, no, of course. And if you were to ask David Lynch which is the film that he regrets making, he will say Dune. But he'll also say without Dune, there would be no Blue Velvet. So, I mean, he was working on Blue Velvet prior to Dune. It's just, it would not have been made in its current form that we know now. It wouldn't have been Colin McLaughlin, Laura Dern, Dennis Hopper, and Isabella Rossellini. Just wouldn't have been. And Angelo Badalamenti, he never would have met Angelo Badalamenti because Badalamenti was brought on like halfway through the shoot because Lynch was going to do it all with Russian music. And Isabella Rossellini couldn't get her track right. So the producer, Fred Caruso, brought Angelo Badalamenti in to help Isabella Rossellini get the track right. And that's how Lynch met Badalamenti. And then they scrapped the Russian music and did the full orchestration. So without that, there is no Badalamenti-Lynch collaboration.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So in a way, we should all, as David Lynch fans, appreciate Dune for what it is. Flaws and all.
And as far as you're kind of like, you know, again, I doubt there's anybody watching that hasn't seen it or attempted, but I mean, if you're on Netflix and you're bored and you're watching yet another Marvel movie that's got kind of the same thing going on, I don't know. I'm getting super bored with some stuff, even stuff I used to like, but Dune's like weird, and I mean, give it
you don't
a chance.
have to watch it all in one shot. I mean, you can.
Yeah,
the
it's
best thing
kind of
about
long. Yeah.
the best thing about Netflix is you can come out of it and then resume, right? So watch 20 minutes and then back out and come back later and watch another 20 minutes, and just so that you can say you saw it. And there's a lot of positivity in the film, I think, itself, even though Lynch says he doesn't like it. I mean, it's beautiful looking.
Yeah, there's a couple shots here and there that aren't great, but yeah, source material is great too. I'm not that big of a reader necessarily. I'm not like crazy into sci-fi and fantasy and stuff, but those books are really good. Got a lot to do with ecology and the relationship of nature and the planet and the spice and water, and all that stuff is kind of ties into our ecological system as well, and it's very political. It's kind of like Game of Thrones in space, kind of, in a way.
Well, they also played it a lot during the Gulf War in '91 because Twin Peaks was still on, but because the whole like Arrakis and the Padishah Emperor Saddam the Fourth, they started playing it thinking like we were gonna like see like the Gulf War like in this movie. Tony says the Spice Driver fan edit is the one I prefer. I don't know too much about that. Do you know anything about that?
No, never heard of it.
So I guess this person probably found more footage. I don't know how, but it created this super cut of it. But that might be worth checking out for all you Dune fans out there. Let's see here. Stephanie says, I was 14 or 15 when Dune came out. The big selling point for me was Sting. I didn't know who David Lynch was at the time. I just wanted to see Sting act. It's funny because Sting's in Dune, and then David Bowie shows up in Fire Walk with Me, and he definitely has that soft spot for wanting to put musicians in as actors. But
yeah.
but if I have like this essay book, and it's fascinating, and I love when people make points that I don't necessarily agree with, but they present it in such a way that I go, I can totally understand where you're coming from. And he talks about how Eraserhead, Elephant Man, Dune is a trajectory for a career that David Lynch abandoned. That all of those films talk about like sex as being like, devious and kind of buried under the surface, and the horrors of sex, like in terms of the baby or like John Merrick and Elephant Man and Dune. I think you see actually like a baby getting like born at one point in the film.
Right. Yeah.
And when those weren't getting the awards, getting the recognition, box office wise in terms of Dune, that David Lynch reversed himself and just became, let's just give America what it wants: sex, drugs, rock and roll. So Blue Velvet becomes just sex in your face, nudity in your face. Nothing's hidden anymore. Everything's just exposed, and he turned the theme of, small town America and the secrets underneath the surface, just full blown out in the open, as opposed to being suppressed within the film for people to discover on their own. It's now blatantly in your face. Wild at Heart is just full of sex with like Laura Dern having orgasms right in your face at one point, right? And I thought that was a fascinating concept, that he felt that even though Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, and Twin Peaks were at the time of the essay were his most celebrated of the works, he felt that they had cheapened him as an artist compared to Eraserhead, Elephant Man, and Dune. He felt that was a more serious artist at play. And it's like a 20-page essay or so, but it's fascinating, because you start going, oh my God, I can totally see where you're going. And of course, this was written before Fire Walk with Me even came out, so you knew that Fire Walk with Me was going to bolster that argument even more in his eyes.
Yeah.
But I'll pull that out one day. It's pretty interesting stuff. So what the haiku on here? That's Richard. He does that haiku every day. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I subscribed to his channel. Everyone should check it out. It's good stuff.
He asks us, what are your thoughts on Laura's Secret Diary, the book by Jennifer Lynch? Do you find anything in it that adds to your feelings about the show in general? Now, this was something that I actually asked her about when I interviewed her. I asked her, I said, when your dad was going to make Fire Walk with Me, did you think that your dad was going to make a somewhat of a translation of the book into the film? And she said, my dad never read the book. Which is interesting considering the book came out like right at the start of season 2.
Yeah.
So you know that he had to have read some of it and Mark Frost had to read some of it because they had to make sure it wasn't going to conflict with what they were saying, you know. And I guess Jennifer did say she did get a little too close in certain parts, and those were the ripped pages of the in the diary proper. I think maybe 1 or 2 were planned, but there were a lot more than she was planning on doing.
Yeah, because there's 9.
Yeah,
there's like 9 pages.
So again, the continuity doesn't really match up because I mean, what they were doing with season 2, they referenced the Secret Diary, obviously with Harold Smith, but they don't really go into it very much.
Right.
The conflict comes in terms of the continuity with Fire Walk with Me, because Fire Walk with Me has nothing to do with that diary. You know, it's its own thing.
Yeah.
So again, you could argue what is continuity in Twin Peaks. You know, you could say, well, the Agent Cooper diaries are continuity. No, they're not, because it's him and Sam Stanley investigating Teresa Banks' murder, not Chet Desmond. And I think that's what they were going for in Fire Walk with Me, is that. But obviously Kyle didn't want to do that. So I count the books as being, I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's part of the continuity, but you also have to be able to divorce yourself from it and be like, okay, this was continuity at an earlier time before Lynch decided to do. Because I mean, if you look at Jennifer Lynch's diary, there should be like, especially knowing what we know about season 3, right? That diary does not sync up at all with what we know about or think we know about Laura now giving season 3.
Right.
It's just the story of a troubled girl going through hell, basically, this diary. Yeah. So much so that when my mom gave it to me for Christmas, it was in my stocking, and when I opened it, I went, oh my good, Laura Palmer's diary. And she said, I don't know if I should really be giving you that, because she flipped through it. But if you ever meet Jennifer Lynch and she's autographing things, let her sign your book, because Laura has a long list of people that she slept with, and Jennifer Lynch, without even asking, will add your initials to that list, which is kind of fun. Nice. So, Jeremiah, where do you stand on the Secret Diary of Laura Palmer? Is it canon? Is it not canon? Does it enlighten the show for you in any way?
Yeah, I like it, and didn't read it till way further down the road, and I did the audiobook with Cheryl Lee recently, which is amazing, like 1,000 times. I mean, it's not, I don't know if I had doubts or whatever, but it's really, really good. I did, like, basically it exceeded my expectations, her performance and all of that. It's really great. If I were to break all of Twin Peaks into like a tier system, so they all exist, they're all relevant to a Twin Peaks discussion, but I think that the things that I consider most serious, or like, is the visual media. Sorry, my cat is driving me crazy. There's the show, the original show, Firewalk with Me movie, and The Return is kind of like the top. And then, like, second tier of importance to me is the Mark Frost books, because he's the co-creator, and I take his backstory a little bit more seriously. Then I put the diary with the Dale Cooper tapes and the town guide to Twin Peaks, like, like down there, then that's like for people that like really want to go deep and really want to, you know, see what else is out there. Then, but I think it's a good story. I think it stands on its own. If you don't know anything about Twin Peaks, like you could probably read it, and yeah, it's a young girl going through hell, and it's really dark, and it's super intense, and but there's contradictions all over, like people, the spelling of people's names, the thing about Bobby shooting somebody is different than in Fire Walk with Me, that whole situation. So there's contradictions like everywhere, but I think Jennifer Lynch like nailed it, did a good job. She did the tone of Laura just right. I'm retrospective, I'm glad that they um that she went the more R-rated, honest route. You know what I mean? Like they could have really.
Well, it's a hell of a tie-in for a TV show.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's the first iteration of Twin Peaks with the F word. You know what I mean? Like,
well, you know, let me just pause you right there, because that's something that I've actually been. I mean, this is pre-season 3 discussion, but that was something I always had a problem with, because I always thought that, especially when doing Fire Walk with Me, that Laura Palmer should be the only person in the Twin Peaks world who uses profanity, because she was dead before the show began. And so when Bobby Briggs says, "Jacques, you crazy effing Canadian," you know, that was, I believe, an ad lib by Dana Ashbrook. And I always detested it because I thought Bobby Briggs cannot curse, because he's already been established as not cursing, right? Or like having Sheriff Harry Truman, like just they found clever ways of doing it, like Bobby Briggs button it. Like they just found like clever ways to say what may be curse words, but they found clever ways to go around it. And I felt like Laura Palmer should be the only person in the Twin Peaks universe who curses by that rationale. Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously season 3 becomes a whole different thing. I mean, Steven has like the worst mouth I've ever heard in my life, with that tree scene with Gersten, which you couldn't understand a single word he's saying unless you have the subtitles on. Yeah, so Jennifer Lynch's diary brings up the F word, and I was okay with that because it was Laura Palmer and she was dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. Some people think it's really amusing when I talk like this, but I'm not a prude at all. I just think that if you have 30 episodes where you've established someone's vocabulary, to just randomly throw in the F word from a character that had plenty of opportunities to use that F word in the series.
Yeah.
I think it's a mistake. If I was on set, I would have said, "Can we just do another take?" Because that is not what Bobby Briggs would have said.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see that. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, other than The Return, that would be the only other opportunity. But like, lots of people curse in The Return, I guess. So
well, that's a different story, and you could make the argument that's 30 years later. And the doppelganger's out, so everybody has become depraved and all that.
right, yeah.
But I you know, because Fire Walk with Me only has like 1 or 2 little curse words in it. Like I would like even the whole Deer Meadow sequence doesn't have a curse word in it.
Right.
Like the only person who curses, I think, is Bobby. Maybe Laura, but in terms of the original characters, right? And so it just kind of comes out of nowhere. But like there were so many opportunities in Fire Walk with Me for people to just be cursing up a storm, and they don't. So obviously there was a decision to just throw in a curse word here and there to make it R-rated. But let's be honest, your Fire Walk with Me was going to be R-rated regardless of the language.
Yeah. Huh.
It's these nitpicky things, Jeremiah, that keep me awake at night sometimes.
I just, it's good. If you haven't checked it out, people that are watching, if you get a chance, read the Laura book. It's super intense. They did a really good job. If you're a big Twin Peaks fan and you haven't read it yet, like, it's not the end of the world either. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
but I do think there is artistry to it. I mean, I think Jennifer Lynch really put her heart and soul into it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. So go buy it. Go get the Cheryl Lee performing the audiobook. definitely. It's a great work of art. It's just like if you're if you just watch Twin Peaks like for the first time, you watch the original show and Fire Walk with Me and whatever, and you're trying to kind of like put it all together in your mind, like what does it mean to you, and what do you think the story is going on, and this and that. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's not the end of the world if you haven't read the Laura Palmer book. Like the trauma and drama and what she goes through is very well represented in Fire Walk with Me. So if you haven't gotten to the book yet, it's not like, oh my God, like it's not like you're gonna read the book and like, oh, everything's gonna like make sense. But it's great and it stands on its own, and I'm like I said, I'm super happy they went R-rated and adult. So like my younger sister read it, you know, and like that book means a lot to a lot of people, you know, especially like, you know, it's so intense, and like uh I gotta say, like the female perspective, like it's about Laura and written by Jennifer Lynch. Like it's like it was like to hear it again recently is like super refreshing. So I it is great.
And obviously I think that you should get it as a Twin Peaks fan. I I think it's mandatory if you're a Twin Peaks fan to own the book and probably now own the audio version, just because you can travel around in your car listening to Cheryl Lee, like reading in your ear, like Donna and James listening to the tapes. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah. That's how I did it.
I'm okay. So I'm gonna say this. I think that as a Twin Peaks fan, you should own Laura Palmer's diary before you go out and spend $200 on an Al Cave ring.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I don't know why. I mean, yeah, everyone should own it. At least go look, buy it, listen to it, or get it from the library. Like it's excellent. But it's not like the missing pieces when they come out and they show you the whole Philip Jeffries scene and the whole like. It's not like, for me anyway. It's not as
Well, you have a worse book right there on your shelf that you just got. Hold that up.
Yeah. So speaking of, so I have this.
Speaking of the one of the worst books ever written for the Twin Peaks universe. What is it again?
Visitor's Guide, right?
Yes.
Access guide to the town.
Yes. Now, the only reason why that book has become a must-have at this moment is, one is, if you're a Twin Peaks collector, you want to get it. You can get them pretty cheap now. But it's because of the infamous picture. Hold it up and talk so your camera's on you.
Oh, can you guys see it?
Yes. So they have the Frog Moth actually in that book.
Yeah. So I actually was looking in the Packard sawmill. So I was going through the secret history, and there's actually not a whole lot. I mean, there's a little bit of the Packard family history, and then I knew that there was a bunch of stuff in here. And then the Frog Moth thing is pretty awesome. I remember someone found that like right after part 8 and put it online. They were like, holy shit, they went so deep they even referenced the access guide to the town book. So it's a Chinook Indian tribe legend about these Frog Moth things, and there's nothing like crazy profound in here, but it is cool that's in there from the get-go.
I agree. Peter Stanley says Laura Palmer's diary contains the idea that Bob talks about needing things, not wanting them, or about not needing things but wanting them.
So let me say that real quick too. Like, you know, disregard everything I said. You got to go get it. You got to read it. There is Mark Frost, at least. If you said David Lynch never read the book, I believe Mark Frost went through every single piece of everything Twin Peaks that's ever been written, and that includes this, Laura's diary, Agent Cooper's tapes, all of those things. There's a line or two or a thing, like there is. All of these things reference each other in minor. So I think it is canon. If Mark Frost is going to that book and pulling out things, then it's part of the universe.
But remember, in the Inland Empire special features, David Lynch is referencing frog moths too. So obviously this is in his head.
Yes. So, and then where did those lines cross? You know what I mean? That's that's why I want to be involved. That's why I'd want to see them Skype talking to each other, referencing.
I think if there is a disconnect in season 3, one could make the argument, because if you know supposedly the production history of it, was that David Lynch comes up with all these fantastical ideas. Mark Frost comes up with all these great ideas, and then they start writing, and then Lynch will come up with another idea, and then Frost, with his analytical brain, has to figure out, okay, how can we fit that in so that it still works narratively, but at the same time gives David the chance to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
But what happened was they completed a script, this legendary 500-page script that Kyle MacLachlan read, that is very different from what the show turned out being, because Frost then left to work on his Secret History book, right? And so Lynch was left with the script, filming it. Mm-hmm. Now, Frost, if you watch the behind the scenes stuff, you do see Frost in a number of the behind the scenes. However, when it came time to make adjustments, or Lynch wanted to change something, Lynch would change it then, on the set. He didn't have Frost and him weren't changing things on the set together. So when things were changing, it was Lynch who was making the call. So I think, obviously I haven't seen the 500-page script, but what it seems like is, when you watch the pilot, when you watch episode 1, when you watch episode 2 of Twin Peaks, it really feels like a 50-50 collaboration, Frost and Lynch. I think season 3 is like a 75% Lynch, ultimately. I think Frost was there for a lot of it, but I think that Lynch ended up taking over an extra 25% while filming, because there are things in there that you cannot believe that Frost had a hand in writing. Like, it just seems like things were adapting and changing throughout the shoot. And even towards the ending was completely rewritten like 5 minutes before they even shot it. I had people telling me Lynch was in the living room, Laura Palmer's living room, like rewriting the ending and then giving the lines to the people right before, like Inland Empire. Here are the lines like 2 minutes before we shoot. And Frost obviously wasn't on set for that, so he changed the whole ending without Frost there.
Yeah.
Again, we don't know the specifics, but it does seem like there's so much of season 3 that I could make an argument that Frost was involved in. But ultimately, when you stand back and look at season 3, it does tip a little bit more into Lynch's world than a straight 50-50 collaboration.
Agreed. And that's the nature of, I think I think Frost knew that was going to happen, like how it was going to be. It's kind of like David has a little bit more say so in the show, and then the books are kind of like Frost's own thing. But you're right. But sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, but your observation's correct. I didn't know that I don't know to what extent that Lynch rewrites, but he does do it. So it makes sense that there's definitely more. That ending makes more sense. That was my first reaction with the ending, was like, how did Mark Frost set up this Secret History in the books and the backstories and this and this and this and this and this and go out before saying that this show's going to have some closure to it and all of that, and then that's the ending that we got. I was just like, how did that happen, right?
Well, I like the ending. And
I do too. It's definitely a David Lynch open-ended question wrapped in a nightmare, right? Like this isn't like a historical document showing that the the Owl Cave ring was made by the blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like it's a
Well, we're lucky we got episode 8 at all. That like is like a legitimate flashback episode.
yeah, which it's the greatest thing I've ever seen.
But I would even argue though that episode 8 didn't go far enough for me. Like I think if you're gonna go back like that, I would have loved to have seen Bob taking over Leland. I would have loved to have seen little things. I thought we were going to get that when we got the 2 kids. I thought at first I was like, oh my God, is this going to be how Bob took over Leland? I thought that's where we were heading with that. So I think I think there could have been a possibility to show the summer at Pearl Lakes and that kind of thing, kind of hinted at. So again, it's like there are so many avenues. There's so much material that can be explored still that just have not been mined at all. And going back to Dune, it's like, it's all about mining for the spice, right? Well, that's, I think what we're doing as Twin Peaks fans is we mine the material looking for the spice.
Yeah, right.
The spice must flow. Let's see here. Kevin says people would have cursed on the original Twin Peaks if the FCC would have allowed it. Probably. However, that was the case, right? That was the rules that they had. So if you have established rules like that, FCC or not, right, that there's no profanity and you've worked around it, then I feel like you should keep that continuity there. Especially since Fire Walk With Me was not littered with profanity. It's pretty. There's not much profanity at all. It's not like Dennis Hopper or Willem Dafoe is in this movie, right?
Yeah, I just think that I think it's just with. I mean, maybe they thought about it, but
no, they didn't think about it at all. Lynch works in the moment and just was like, "Great, that sounds great, Bobby. Let's do it."
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that all bets were off with Fire Walk With Me. Like, I think that he, like, let's rewatch the pilot and make some connecting points to write the script, but everything else is like, I mean, there's a bare knuckle brawl in the missing pieces. There's all kinds of stuff that they would never even. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just remember seeing stills of that brawl and going, "Oh, I would love to see that scene." And then after seeing it, I'm like, I can totally see why they cut this.
Yeah, I do love it though.
It's too long.
Yeah, but I just because it's the missing pieces is great because it's just like you can watch them one at a time or just whatever. I don't know.
No,
it cracks me up. It cracks me up seeing Chris Isaac just clobber that dude. Yeah, it's too long. It's goofy.
It's directed like it's Rocky 5. It's just,
Yeah.
It's just tonally it doesn't fit. Just that's the issue. I mean, I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to have seen it, but tonally I just don't think it would have worked at all in that film.
Yeah, it would have screwed everything up. Like, because it's really supposed to. I mean, it does kind of tie in. I don't know. It just would have. It wouldn't have worked in the movie. It would have
I would say it's one of the rare cases where I don't have a problem with the scene itself. I think that the execution of the scene is a bit off. I think that Lynch directed it in a way that was not just tonally consistent with the rest of the film. So it stood out.
Yeah, it does stand out. And that's literally what it is like, it's like, I'm never like, oh, I have to watch this scene to understand something about Twin Peaks that I didn't understand before. It's like, hey, well, I've got the disc in. I want to see Chris Isaac kick the shit out of some guy. And that's just all it is, right? I don't even think there's music. Like, it's just like,
but when you watch the one of my favorites, of course, of the missing pieces is the Ed and Norma scene in the car. Right.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, they're not going to just randomly cut to Ed and Norma in the car without some setup of it in the movie, so they get cut out. But when you watch that scene, it completely fits tonally with Fire Walk with Me. So much so that the main theme of the movie comes in onto the radio. So whenever I see that scene, I feel like that's a true deleted moment from the movie proper. Whereas like I feel like the Chris Isaac scene is like a quirky outtake scene that never would have made it into the movie.
Yeah. I like the Ed Norma scene's great. Anything with Ed Norma's great. But I agree. I remember watching that. I'm like, that's like the theme of the show, the whole movie playing in the car. Like I wonder where that would have went. And I mean, because the whole thing is like stripped down to just Laura, you know. So more or less, like the second and third act is all Laura, and basically anything that's not absolutely crucial to that is all cut out.
Everything. I remember getting a magazine saying the 2 hour and 14-minute version that played at Cannes, you know, and it listed everybody that got cut out of the film. And I remember being deflated reading that before I saw the movie. It's like they were preparing you. There wasn't a lot of press coverage about this movie, but what there was like, get ready to be disappointed. Like that was the idea. But I remember opening Premiere Magazine and seeing that the poster like taking over a whole page and thinking that is probably the most brilliant poster of David Lynch's career, with the red room and the necklace with the fire coming out in Laura's picture. I thought that is gorgeous. Yeah. And I could make the argument that poster is for a movie that does not exist. That poster is much more of an epic story than I think what we get in Fire Walk with Me. And it's funny that I remember back in the day, people having the discussion of Fire Walk with Me. Some people would think, oh, that's the weirdest thing Lynch has ever made. And some people would watch Fire Walk with Me and say, that's the most normal film that David Lynch has ever made. Because you could say there are times when you watch it and you go, it's pretty straightforward. You know, it's, you know, there's not a lot of, it wasn't until Lost Highway they started playing with all the loop-de-loops and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Fire Walk with Me, even though there's two stories like Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway, it's still like prologue, Laura.
Yeah.
Now, maybe if they did like maybe a cutback, maybe if they did Chris Isaac and Sam Stanley investigating Teresa Banks and intertwine that with Laura Palmer and cut back and forth between the two stories, that could have added some cool tension too. So, I mean, there's lots of things they could have done.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an interesting. It's so funny. Like David Lynch is like the one guy that I let this slide with, because I got a real problem with people like George Lucas, for example. Like, I don't want to get into it too much, but like the fact that I can't go to a store and buy the original 3 Star Wars movies that changed cinema and won Oscars because this maniac has got this like control-like thing over his property, and every version of Star Wars that comes out is different, and they change something that pisses me off, right? But like, but David Lynch kind of like Fire Walk with Me is kind of an incomplete idea, and it's kind of an incomplete movie, and then they release the missing pieces, and then he does this, takes Fire Walk with Me, something that's basically controversial, you know, and then they tie it all into The Return. So like Fire Walk with Me now to me is like the most important, maybe not the best, but it's like it holds everything together, and it feels like you know, an incomplete film, and the missing pieces. Like if you didn't know David Lynch or Twin Peaks, like, oh, so he's releasing another hour and a half to this nonsense movie, so maybe you can like make sense of it. And it's like, yeah, not really. I mean, anyway, I complain. Oh, and the other thing is the new subverting expectations craze. Like, I don't know if it's a craze or whatever. It just seems like, especially with Star Wars again, it just like people think they're being clever by like screwing over the audience in a lot of ways, like totally not giving us what we want. But like with David Lynch, it works for me. So I'm just kind of like a hypocrite when it comes to David Lynch. So there's stuff that I hate George Lucas for that David Lynch does all the time, but I don't mind it because the tone is different and the idea behind the films are different, and it's like, yeah, this is interpretive and surreal and absurd. And
Well, I think the ultimate goal of season 3 was twofold. I mean, obviously, I know they wanted to kind of explore this new material, etc.
yeah,
And also, I think make it a celebration of David Lynch's career in a way, right? With all it's like full of retrospective stuff in there. However, I think if you dig a little deeper to find the bugs in the dirt, I think there's two reasons for season 3's existence, ultimate existence. That is, Mark Frost apparently really disliked Fire Walk with Me, and he didn't want that to be the last word. So let me use my brilliance to come in and try to make Fire Walk with Me a part of this world as opposed to just being like the bastard stepchild of the Twin Peaks universe.
Yeah.
Then I think David Lynch's perspective is Fire Walk with Me got destroyed by fans, by critics. It's not appreciated. Even during his interview with Charlie Rose, when he's promoting Lost Highway, talks about how Fire Walk with Me was hated, and he hopes that one day people will go back and look at that film. So I firmly believe that if you look at season 3, what does it reference? Is it referencing seasons 1 and 2? Very little. What does it reference the most? Fire Walk with Me. So I think that Lynch made it sort of a point to make Fire Walk with Me tie into season 3 so much that you would have to go back and appreciate Fire Walk with Me for what it is. However, he's very lucky that people like him more now than they did back in 92. Because if season 3 had come out in 95, let's say, it would have been the same things. Oh God, he's still going on and on about Laura Palmer. Laura's the one. Give it up. Move on. And the other thing would be like, why is this tying into like the worst thing ever for Twin Peaks? Right. Fire Walk with Me. But you give it 25 years and a Criterion release and all this stuff. All of a sudden it's like, wow, Fire Walk with Me was this completely misunderstood movie. I don't know if it was misunderstood. I just think that I think if some of those missing pieces had been in the theatrical film, I think it would have gone a long way to smoothing it over for a lot of the audience. I think one of the core things that people had problems with, not the critics per se, but like the fans, was not so much that just went backwards. That was there. I agree. Because I remember my mom watching it and going, okay, and we already knew all this. It was the fact that it had just been stripped down to Laura, Donna, Bobby, James, and her parents. And they really missed everybody else.
Yeah.
And I've said before that Fire Walk with Me was the fastest turnaround Lynch had ever made a film, because season 2 is off the air June 11th, I believe, or 12th, 1991. By May of 92, Fire Walk with Me is at the Cannes Film Festival. That is fast.
Yeah.
For a film of that complexity. And I think that if Lynch had maybe had an extra 6 months, another 7 months to tweak it, I think that some of those scenes in Fire Walk with Me would have been out, and I think other ones would have made it in. But because they had to turn around so fast, I don't think there was time to really examine. I think they created this big cut of it, and then it was like, oh, this is too long. Oh, we only got a U.S. distribution deal for 2 hours and 14 minutes and some change. Let's cut everything that doesn't have to do with the main story. And so that's what they did. They streamlined it, which is fine. But at the same time, though, that is, I think, one of the main reasons why that film got a lot of pushback from fans. Because one of those people that had been streamlined to, Donna, had been recast. Now, granted, Mark Kelly, I think, did a great job. But you're talking about one of the main people of your film that you've cut everybody else out is a recasted role. Right? So... But I do think that season 3 was ultimately about that. Let's redeem Fire Walk with Me, at least in our eyes. Now, I know David Lynch loves Fire Walk with Me, but he wanted to make it so that it was that Twin Peaks fans could not refuse it any longer. They had to incorporate it into the continuity. And I think it was Frost's job to make it make sense within the continuity, because everything presented in Fire Walk with Me is so not what the show is. There's no alcave ring. There's and there's just a lot of things brought into Firewalk with Me that has nothing to do with the series,
Right.
which really I think irritated the hell out of Frost. So
Yeah,
I mean, wouldn't you be like, if you were 50% of the creator and you're like, okay, I'm gonna have someone else gonna write this with Lynch, and then you went and saw Fire Walk with Me, you'd be like, what the hell is this? This got nothing to do with our show.
Yeah, it's funny, but again, that's why I like the Secret History so much. Is like he really embraced that stuff. Frost did really embrace the Owl Cave ring, and I mean,
but again, season 3 really goes out of its way to make that Owl Cave ring part of the mythology, as opposed to just a throwaway part of the mythology in Fire Walk with Me.
Right. Well, but I mean, do you think that like the Owl Cave ring and Laura putting the ring on and going into the Red Room, and like, do you think that that's a fully fleshed out idea, that the way it ended up on screen, people, it's ambiguous, or do you think that it was ambiguous before, always ambiguous, and then Frost gave it like a literary, like really fleshed out, like if you put the ring on, then you go to the Red Room thing? It's kind of more like implied in Fire Walk with Me, but
right.
You think
I'll be honest with you. Until season 3, I still had no real concrete ideas as to what that ring even did.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like, I mean, it was there, and I guess
Yeah.
but after seeing season 3, you go back and watch Fire Walk with Me. It's like Frost made it very intelligible now as to what is happening.
Yeah. That's what. Yeah.
And I don't think that's a problem. I mean, what's wrong with that? There's plenty of other things to think about in Twin Peaks than worry about the implications of whether you put the ring on or not.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just it's fascinating that they did, because like we started talking about Laura's diary. Like, yes, the person that made that comment, I noticed that recently. I don't want, I need. I mean, certainly certain things can be coincidences or whatever, but I'm 100% convinced that Frost went through everything officially released in the Twin Peaks universe and pulled ideas and stuff, for sure.
Yeah. And the same thing with like Philip Jeffries in season 3, right? I mean, there was no Philip Jeffries at all mentioned at all in season 1 and 2. And all of a sudden he shows up for a minute and a half and almost threatens to derail the entire movie for that minute and a half. Like, what the heck is going on here? Yeah. And we had this discussion on another video, which is, not saying anything bad about David Bowie or that, but if you have to truncate your scene that small, maybe you should have just deleted the whole thing out. But I mean, I would have traded the Philip Jeffries scene out to get that full above the convenience store in, because I think that if they had just shown Chris Isaac reaching for the ring, fading out to black, and then all of a sudden we got that above the convenience store scene, and then it went from that to Laura Palmer walking down the street, people would have crapped themselves.
Yeah, I think that would have been super cool. If you'd have gone right to the convenience store scene, then right into Laura, I think that it would have, because it's kind of a slow build up. Like she, obviously there's this Bob character, and then there's missing pay. Like, as far as what's happening on screen, like it's a slow build up to like the old lady and the grandson and the picture and the dreams and stuff. If they'd have put that convenience store scene in full right up front, you might have had more of a clear understanding with what's working against Laura. But it could have deflated. It could have deflated the. Whereas like before, it's just like a quick flash, and you're just kind of trying to process it, and then you just goes right into
right.
Laura. If it had been like really long, I don't know. It's interesting. I never.
Now remember, in the script, Laura Palmer's walking down the street, and then all of a sudden it cuts to the FBI office, and then we get the Philip Jeffries scene in the script. And then after that, it cuts to Laura picking up Donna outside the house, and they walk to school. One, glad they changed that, because that just, I mean, you're just introduced to Laura Palmer, and then you get, before she even gets Donna, you're back at the FBI offices. Two, that's why the majority of the Philip Jeffries scene was cut out. Not so much for time, but because he starts talking about 1989, which is when Laura Palmer is. But they moved it up a year, so they can't have him be talking about 1989 when they moved it up to 1988 in the finished film.
Yeah.
So in the script, that scene takes place in 1989. In the finished film, it's 88 because they moved it up a year. Just so that yeah.
Oh, so I'm gonna cheap plug for myself real quick, but my Philip Jeffries video on takethering.com is, I specifically talk about that, and I specifically go into that. So speaking of Frost, like retconning things to like fit. So Philip Jeffries shows up in Philadelphia in 1988 in the original cut of Fire Walk With Me, but with the missing pieces and the Secret History and Final Dossier novels, and in The Return, everything moving forward, with the introduction of the missing pieces, everything moving forward, it's 1989. It's supposed to be right before Laura was killed. Whereas because of the edit in the theatrical cut of Fire Walk With Me, it's 1988, and I break all that down. And yeah, I mean, everything from dates, excuse me. So Laura, back to the Secret Diary, the Laura Secret Diary is, the dates are messed up too. Someone put it on a timeline, and like, I think something in the show, she says something about Bob happens in here, and in the book it's supposed to be a year before. I can't remember, but like, that's the nature of this show, is just every incarnation is different and has an inconsistency, and it's you're gonna melt your brain trying to.
Well, I remember everyone on the duck before pretty much had a heart attack when the Secret History came out, and dates were all mixed up and names were changed and things like that.
Secret History's Pete played chess, not played checkers, not chess. Remember all that?
Yeah.
So, and it's like, but the whole episode of Pete playing chess, like, what's and then Mark Frost explains some of that stuff in the Final Dossier, but some of it is not. But yeah, sorry, I forget what we were talking about.
All right, let's go back to the chat here. Stephanie says Lynch wanted to justify Fire Walk With Me. I can appreciate that, because I liked Fire Walk With Me from the beginning. Let's see. Kevin says, do you think Lynch would ever release a director's cut of Fire Walk With Me with the missing pieces included? Well, a couple of years ago at the UK festival, Sabrina Sutherland did say that he was working on a new cut of Fire Walk With Me, which was surprising because people assumed that when the Blu-rays came out, that it would have been a different version, a different cut of it. In fact, I think that would have been a huge selling point for the Criterion disc if that had been a new cut of it, because I know us as fans pick up everything, and so I have it too, but that Criterion disc, more or less, with the exception of the Cheryl Lee interview, is just a reprint of what was already in the Blu-ray box. I mean,
there's two interviews,
right?
But actually, I wasn't going to get it, but I got it as a gift, the Criterion one,
right,
for my birthday a couple years back. So I'm glad I got it, because the packaging's cool, and that poster you're talking about is kind of redone, and it's got a nice. But it looks good. It sounds good. Yeah. But there's two interviews on there, but you're right. Other than that, it's everything that came in the entire mystery box.
But then they have the interview or discussion with Lynch and Ray Wise and Grace Zabriskie and Cheryl Lee on there, but they cut out the whole first part of them being the characters. It's only the interview portion of it, the Between Two Worlds segment. So even that is, you don't even get the whole thing of that.
Yeah, interesting.
But what's interesting is the Criterion didn't put the documentaries on there that were on the Blu-ray about Fire Walk With Me. I mean, there were like, and like the Japanese commercial that I found for Fire Walk with Me that you can find on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have loved to have seen that. I would have loved to have seen maybe like news footage of the Fire Walk with Me premiere in Japan when they actually put Laura Palmer, a mannequin of Laura Palmer wrapped in plastic, floated her down this river, and that everybody like bowed down and prayed to it. Like, I want to see that. Like, that would, I mean, I wish the Criterion disc had more like selling points rather than just like, so it's basically a reprint. However, going back to your question, Kevin, I would love to see Lynch do a new cut of Fire Walk with Me. However, I don't want him to just do like the Q2 fan edit and put the missing pieces in. I want him to go crazy with it. For instance, if Laura screams in the darkness, why not have the shot of Agent Cooper show up randomly in the woods in Fire Walk with Me? That would be amazing. Like, just kind of make it a blend. However, of course, you get into the time travel issues of it. Is if Agent Cooper was always there, then Laura Palmer never would have died. You know, so you can't really. I mean, it would be hard to put him in that, but you know what I mean. I'm just saying, like just make it a balls to the wall, you know, just kind of free for all edit as opposed to just putting the missing pieces in.
Yeah. Well, I think that if I were to just guess, I remember that it was out there that he was going to do a new cut, and the new cut didn't, because it wasn't on the entire mystery set, and it wasn't in the Criterion set. And do you think that maybe it's because what we've just been talking about, that it's like maybe that was something like, yeah, sure, that might be cool, like maybe, but then with the entire mystery coming out and the missing pieces, and like it's kind of in a good format, the missing pieces, you know, it's 90 minutes. It's almost like this is a terrible comparison, but when Spinal Tap came out on DVD for the first time, they released like another like 90 minutes of outtakes, but they, you know, slammed them all together. So it's not cohesive, but it's fun. So, you know, I would like watch Spinal Tap and then like just roll right into like this extra hour of stuff. And you already know the context because of the movie, and the missing pieces was set up the same way. My point is that maybe with the entire mystery coming out, the missing pieces coming out, a lot of that stuff being retconned and fit and explained more or less in context of the return and the secret history. Maybe now he's just like, yeah, and there's people doing fan edits with the missing pieces, and maybe he's just like, you know, like maybe like, is it worth it? You know, I don't know. So, but I agree. If he does, it would be sweet if he did it like you said, like all bets are off. Here's all the footage from scratch or whatever, or you know what I mean, more or less from scratch. That would be super cool.
Let's put the pig shot back into the Leland Laura scene on the bed. That, you know about that, right? That he brought in a dead pig, and so like in between Leland turning into Bob on the bed, there was going to be like this rotting pig above Laura Palmer in bed, and Cheryl Lee refused to do the scene, but they did shoot the pigs separately. So I would love to see that. I would love to see the original version of Laura's death that apparently played at the Cannes Film Festival, that was much more violent, and you could even like hear like stabbing sounds and things like that. They drowned it out with the religious music, but the original cut had the music either off or lower, and people were apparently not doing well with that. So
yeah,
but if anything, you should buy the Criterion release of it even during one of their sales, because a lot of people had issues with the missing pieces playing on their Blu-ray player. Some people complained that halfway through the dialogue would go out of sync, which did happen on a couple of players of mine, but then one player in particular, like, it was fine. So at least with the Criterion disc, that those have been redone over, so you don't have to worry about syncing issues. But see, the thing is, a Criterion, I think, does great with the Lynch works, except Mulholland Drive, which drives me nuts because there's like 1 second. There's 1 second that they messed up, and usually Criterion's really good about correcting mistakes, and they just won't go back and correct it. I understand it's only a second, but Mulholland Drive is considered to be one of the greatest movies of the 21st century. So it would be good if they went back and fixed it. And that is the opening when it says a film by David Lynch. And then if you watch the theater cut, if you watch the DVD, if you watch the streaming, it always, after it says a film by David Lynch, it fades up to the dancers. And the Criterion disc begins with a still shot that just, it's like somebody hits play and then it goes to the dancers. And I was talking with Vincent Pereira, who used to work with Kevin Smith a lot. He does a lot of work with Synapse now. And he says that chances are that fade was not on the original elements. It was probably added at a later date. So when they got the original elements, that fade wasn't there. So Criterion didn't probably know to put it in there. But that also shows that David Lynch probably didn't, even though it says director approved, he probably didn't sit there and go, where's the fade? You know, that type of thing. So somebody didn't catch that. But it's on all the other releases. It has been brought up to Criterion's attention, and they've just said, it's 1 second. So, you know, it's not like Eraserhead where they actually forgot to put in one shot and they had to go back and remaster the whole disc because they forgot to add it. But they cut out a shot of Eraserhead.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
So they had to go back and fix it, which, I mean, if you get it now, obviously it's fixed, but Mulholland Drive still just doesn't have that fade, which I gotta tell you, as a Lynch purist, that kind of stuff bothers me because Lynch is all about the timing of his fades, the dissolves. And so if you don't have those things in there, then especially since it's the first fade from the beginning of the movie, kind of sets the tone. We're supposed to be like waking up or going somewhere, you know what I mean? To just begin on a still frame kind of negates what the whole Betty Diane dilemma is anyway. So
that's crazy. I didn't notice that.
Check it out. Check it out. Put it in your disc and check it out. It's like right after it says film by David Lynch.
Yeah, it's sitting right there, actually.
There you go.
No, here. That's the Criterion Mulholland Drive I borrowed from my sister.
So John says, do you agree with how a lot of people in sites categorize Fire Walk with Me as a horror film? I mean, it is sort of like, see, I've always said that New Line Cinema acquired Fire Walk with Me because they thought it was going to be a thinking person's Nightmare on Elm Street. Because it kind of is Nancy in the house, you know, with Bob as Freddy, that type of thing. And then, of course, it didn't work out that way. But do you see Fire Walk with Me as a horror film?
I don't know. That's tough. It's all so embedded in my brain. Like I when you talk about great horror movies, that doesn't come to mind. Mm. It's funny you mentioned New Line Cinema, and that was one of I read a critique. This is years and years back, but it was just kind of explaining why people didn't like Fire Walk with Me, or reasons that it might have been unsuccessful. And but they definitely, especially with like the home video release, whatever, like the trailers they put on home videos and things, they definitely tried to sell it as that. And I think that, you know, the review that I read was like, you know, so Twin Peaks fans went to go see a Twin Peaks movie and it wasn't a Twin Peaks movie, and horror fans went to go see a horror movie, or, you know, rented a movie they thought was a horror movie, which this writer was saying, you know, it's obviously not. And my take on it is like, if it is, it's so much more than that. Like, I mean, there's certain horror movies, in my opinion, that kind of transcend that. The Exorcist and Alien being two of them that are just so, they're either so good, or I've seen them so many times that in my mind they're more like, Alien is more of a, I don't know, mystery suspense sci-fi to me, and then there's like The Exorcist is so much of it's rooted in human drama. You know, we were talking about like Adam McGowan movie. I mean, Felicia's Journey's a horror movie, sort of, but you know, it's so human and personal. Like it's almost like a regular drama. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's a horror movie, but if someone says, "Man, yeah, it totally is a horror movie. It's about a girl being raped and killed by her father," I'd be like, "Yeah, you got a point." Yeah, like
I think the reason why it's considered to be a horror film, I don't believe that Lynch and Bob Engels set out to write a horror movie. I did have a review when it first came out. There was a town about 2 hours north of me, and I happened to be visiting at that around that time, and got I was collecting everything Twin Peaks at that time in my life, and the article gave Firewalk with Me 1 star and said it's David Lynch's Friday the 13th. When I read that, I actually got really excited. I'm like, oh, I want to see that movie, which of course it's not that movie at all. But I think what it is, because if you look at Blue Velvet, you look at Wild at Heart, and those kind of movies at that time that he was making, there's always this perfect balance between the light and the darkness, right? The thing is, as we talked about, he cutting everybody else out and streamlining the film. Well, by streamlining the film, you're connecting tension and terror scene after scene after scene. So by cutting out Lucy and Andy, by cutting out Ed and Norma, and you're bringing the Laura story tighter together, you're creating a horror film because there's no balance. It's just darkness, which is why Peggy Lipton spoke out against Firewalk with Me when it came out. She said this movie's trash because, she was just like, this is not Twin Peaks. This is not what the show was about.
Yeah.
Some people would argue, no, that's exactly what the show was about a guy who murdered his daughter. But she was saying, no, but that's not tonally what the show was about. The show was always about the balance. And Firewalk with Me is only about, the finished theatrical cut is only about the darkness.
Yeah. Well, and you could argue that, in my mind, obviously, with the exception of the Straight Story, his major motion picture releases from then on, so that's the difference. Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, and Inland Empire. Those are horror movies, kind of. The thing is, he's outgrown. He is his own genre.
Eraserhead was considered a horror movie when it came out.
Right. So I don't know. I guess I don't have any problem with people calling those movies horror movies. But since you and I always end up talking about Kubrick anyway, that's the great conversation I had with my cousin, and we were talking, this is a long time ago, talking about Kubrick movies, and I was telling him, I was well, I love them because they're well executed and they look gorgeous, and they're they're this and they're that, and I was Spielberg brought up this point, and I agree with it, that the reason Kubrick is the greatest, or one of the greatest, is that every movie he did is a period piece, right? And period and genre piece. So whatever, the drill, right? So Barry Lyndon and The Shining and Full Metal Jacket, they're different periods, different tones, different, and Kubrick did the whole gamut. My cousin was like, yeah, but they're also kind of all just, they're horror movies too, right? You could argue that all of them are about the horrible nature of humanity, and the amount of violence and tension and things that he injects in Full Metal Jacket, The Shining, Clockwork Orange, even 2001, you could make but anyway, my point is, Lynch is like Kubrick to me, in my mind. Those are, you can't say that Clockwork Orange is a horror movie. To me, it's like a Kubrick movie, or it's just a great movie. And it's the same way. It's the Lynch Hollywood horror trilogy. Yeah, they're horror movies, I guess, but they're also David Lynch movies. They're Lynch movies because no one else really does them like that.
It's the same thing with Polanski and stuff. You could say Repulsion's a horror film, and The Tenant's a horror film, and Rosemary's Baby's a horror film, but those movies are much more than just that. Mulholland Drive, out of the three, I think Mulholland Drive is closer to, season 1, season 2 of Twin Peaks than Lost Highway and Inland Empire is. So I think Lynch in ways has always been a horror filmmaker when he decides to do horror scenes. I mean, like like the bum coming behind the Winkies and all that. I mean, some of the scariest moments ever. Bob climbing over the couch. Just they're simple, but what we talked about last time. But he also knows how to do the nice scenes perfectly as well. So again, it's all about the balance. Inland Empire, of course, is a true horror film for many, many, many reasons. He makes 3 hours feel like 10. Yeah. Let's see here. Stephanie says Leland and Maddie. Oh, they're talking about the Owl Cave Ring. Stephanie says Maddie was just murdered and did not go to the Black Lodge. Well, I guess we could play devil's advocate and say that we cut back to the Roadhouse before we saw Leland put the ring on her finger, because she does show up at the end of season 2 in the Black Lodge.
Yeah.
Either that, or that could just be her doppelganger. But then again, she'd have to be in the lodge anyway for her to have a doppelganger in there, by the logic of the show.
Yeah,
but
the logic of the show that has no logic.
Well, remember though, I mean, the Owl Cave Ring wasn't even a thought in their brain at all.
Yeah, of course. That's the one thing that it's and I don't know if you're this way, but I'm this way with my videos and how I talk about stuff. Like, making connecting points and stuff is fine, but like if you're really trying to figure out, if you're a new fan or whatever, like starting at the beginning and moving forward and see how it was written as it went, like you can't say that, in the pilot episode something references the Owl Cave Ring. It's like, no, like,
well, what do you say?
They were just guys in 1987 coming up with some ideas, and then they made the pilot, and then based on what people liked of the pilot, then they moved forward. And so some of the genius moves were we need an ending for the international release, so then they made that last 20 minutes or whatever, and people are like, well, what the hell is this? But people reacted to that. So the overseas and the people that saw it that way here, so they ended up writing that into the show. You know what I mean? They could have completely got rid of that, last few scenes in the Red Room and stuff, and gone back. Okay, well, that was just something stupid we did for the international release. Like, we're gonna get back to the FBI. Like, we're gonna get back to the police detective quirky town drama thing. But no, they kept the dream stuff. They kept the Red Room stuff. They worked that into the story.
And remember, in the international pilot ending, it literally says 25 years later.
Yeah. So I am the biggest fan of the international pilot. It's the only one I watch. It's the only one when I was a kid, that was the only one you could buy, by the way.
Right.
If you were to rent or buy the Twin Peaks pilot at the video store, you got the full 2-hour movie. And
for a long time, the pilot was not available. Like, even on a Laserdisc or a season 1 box set, it never was made available until the gold box.
Yeah. So, excuse me. The international pilot sets up the 25 years later, the fact that Cooper is an old man in the Red Room, the Laura coming over, right? The whisper and the kiss. It's the introduction of the man from another place who's the arm. You've got Mike in the hospital says the Fire Walk With Me poem, and there's the boiler room in the basement. So it's the introduction of Bob and Mike and their relationship, and the Fire Walk With Me tattoo on the arm that was supposedly on. It's like all of the and the boiler room, to me, has kind of been retconned a little bit in season 3. Like, that's basically the boiler room of the Great Northern. Like, the setup is all kind of the same, the lighting's all the same. You hear that hum, and so where it makes sense in season 3 in the return at the end when he goes back there, and there's a door basically behind where Bob was standing in the International Pilot, more or less. Behind that, I guess, is a door that Cooper opens and crosses over to the other side in the finale of the return. And then he sees Mike, who says the Fire Walk With Me poem, just like he did in the international version of the pilot. So I don't know. To me, lots of this shit makes more sense in the like, just watch the international pilot, and then they'll touch on those dream, like they'll just call it Cooper's dreams, and they'll just kind of touch on it again in the episodes, and that's the way I prefer to watch it. So
but I wouldn't say watch the international pilot and then watch the show like as a first timer, because that will completely throw you off. Like, watch the pilot proper and then go back and watch it as like kind of a isolated set piece.
Yeah,
because it does in a way kind of ruin the whole season 1, because they they drop so many clues.
Well, sort of, but so I mean, I agree. If you're new to Twin Peaks, do it that way. However, that's the way I saw it, because I didn't see it on TV. I rented the pilot from the video store, which was the international one, and then I bought the VHS tape box set. And that's how I watched it. So I had to, like, so when they got back to Sarah and having the vision and drawing the sketch of Bob, I was like, wait a minute, didn't they already do this? Like, it is confusing, but now once you know the story, just watch the international pilot because it's better.
Well, Carl in here comes in with some revisionist history here. Says, when I watch Fire Walk With Me now with the recast Donna, it makes sense, because with the time travel changes, Doc Hayward is the proper father and not Ben Horn, so Donna would look different. I like it. Although that is not at all what they were going for in Fire Walk With Me, but I like that.
No, that is super awesome. Great observation.
Let's see. Kirsten says it would be fun to make Fire Walk With Me more interactive. I guess, like, allow the Blu-ray, whatever, to create your own version of it. That could be fun.
Bandersnatch with me.
Yes. Thomas says, how about Ben killing Maddie? Didn't they film that too, so nobody knew who the actual killer is? I remember reading that somewhere, but don't know if it's true. I'd watch that. So they did apparently film it with Richard Beamer.
Yeah.
But it's not like they were ever considering using it, because he's arrested like 5 minutes earlier in the episode. Why would he be in Leland's living room? So I think they shot it just so that if the crew says something, they didn't know what to do. So, or who it was. But they shot it, apparently, I thought they shot it 3 times, but I could be, no, I guess they did. Once with Frank Silva, once with Ray Wise, and once with Richard Beamer. It's interesting that they shot Ben killing Maddie, but then when Lynch went to Richard Beamer about being Fire Walk With Me, he balked and said he wouldn't be in it because he's giving drugs to Laura. Like, did you not pay attention to the show?
Yeah. So I was just going to bring that up. I think that that's fascinating. And I think it was more, if I were to speculate, I think I believe he expanded on that at some point. Just basically, like, if you remember Ben, after basically from being like prime suspect in Laura's murder and sleeping with underage girls and all that stuff, then he goes and reconciling with Audrey, and then he has that nervous breakdown with the Civil War and stuff, and he comes back, and then the Pine Weasel, and he's got ulterior motives, but he's on a mission to be good. Remember, like the last like 15 episodes of the show is an arc of this older man who's basically a villain and a scumbag trying to redeem himself, which I kind of like. I like that element's in the book. That element's in season 3, the looking back on his bicycle, and obviously his life's all screwed up, and Sylvia and the marriage is all a sham, and his grandson is running over kids in the street, right? And Audrey's, so obviously his life's not all there, but Ben's an interesting character. Anyway, my point is that in Fire Walk with Me, David Lynch was like, "Hey, we're making a Twin Peaks movie, and we're gonna go back." But when Ben was sleeping with Laura and doing drugs and stuff, and Richard Beamer's like, "Hey, yeah, I don't want to do that. I just spent the last year of my life with this character on this arc of like trying to be a good person and trying to make things right, and then you want me to go back and like do this. If that's going to be the last thing of Twin Peaks is people seeing me like doing that stuff, then I don't think I want to be involved. I believe that's just when I read that was the impression that I got. But I don't know.
I really dislike that idea that he would say that, because you're eliminating Jerry Horn, you're eliminating Ben. To cut Ben Horn out of the Laura Palmer story in Fire Walk with Me means that you're not getting the true Laura Palmer story, because Ben Horn is so linked with Laura.
Well, he's in the secret, back to the Secret Diary. That's why it's important. If you didn't quite pick up on it in the original series, the idea that Ben Horn's got a lot more to do with Laura than not. A lot of that is set up in the Jennifer Lynch book.
Oh, I mean, he's in many ways he's more of a negative influence on her than her dad, at least in series. When you watch the TV series, until you find out what's going on with her father. Your sister is here in the chat, and she says, "My brother is the best. He got me into Twin Peaks when I was 10 and has been a terrible influence ever since." So.
Sounds right. That's right.
Let's see. Your sister goes on to say, "I'm still shocked our video store in such a conservative town had the pilot and Fire Walk with Me back then."
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to remind her that it also had a video stores back then also had an adult movie section, and it didn't, doesn't matter how conservative your town was. Every video store in the United States, I mean, sure, they would pull certain things, but I mean, I don't know. So we had locally owned, and then there was a chain, and so we had a bunch of small chains and locally owned spots that before Blockbuster came in. But all of those stores, by the way, like if you're gonna have the porno wing in the back, then you probably can carry Twin Peaks. But yeah. Anyway, you remember the days of video stores, and I just since you brought that up, I might as well just.
I used to manage one.
Yeah, I just go do my old man thing here real quick, but like I really miss it. I thought I wouldn't. I thought digital would be the greatest thing, but like I've been complaining in other videos, and I do like it. There's certain convenience things, but it's like, man, like it's Friday night, I'm off of work, I want to watch Jaws 2. Okay, I don't want to go home and do a research project and find a streaming service or order it on Amazon. It's going to be here in 3 days. Like, I kind of want to just go down the street and walk into a building and like I know they have Jaws 2. I know they have The Godfather. I know that, Hearts of Darkness, Apocalypse Now documentary. Like, I didn't have HBO. I didn't have that stuff. That documentary was in my video store, and all the original Star Treks and all the old Godzilla movies and all the and every blockbuster that's out. And if you missed, the new whatever movie, like they would have it, and like cool Beam Pumpkinhead, like all kinds of stuff I got from the video store. And I digital is definitely better in convenience and certain things. I just like there's catalog shit that I want to see that I wish there was a place that I could just go grab it. You know what I mean?
I think what you're missing mostly is just the human element of it too. I mean, because You can just go home and find it. It's one thing, but you got to go in there, and sometimes you would see people or talk to people behind the counter, and that was always fun. And also I've had discussions with this with other people, but it's what I miss the most. I know this sounds ridiculous because it was so frustrating at the time, but looking back, what I really miss is the hunt. Like somebody would say, "Hey, have you seen Dario Argento's opera?" No. And thus began a 1-year search to find that movie. Whereas now, you can find it in 5 minutes somewhere online. And I think that's really great in a way. It's like, it's just, you hear about something, or like my sister will hear about a book, and within 3 seconds, she's got it downloaded to her iPad, or and that's fantastic. And yet at the same time, though, I think it makes you less appreciative of the work too, because you've put no effort into it.
Yeah, well, like I said, so next door to this video store was a record shop basically, and the guy that was running the record counter is the guy that tipped me off to Twin Peaks. So I'd go in there and talk about a band or something I was into, and that would usually connect to a movie or something, and then I'd be, oh shit, and then I'd just run next door and grab it. Mm-hmm. And so I hate to be the crusty old man, but I miss being able to, like, and you could argue, like, well, if you want to watch Jaws 2, it's on Amazon. It's like, well, I don't have Prime, so what? Like, okay, so maybe you can still rent it to stream it, but it's like $3.99. Like, I used to go to, you could get like a weekend deal. I used to get like 3 or 4 movies, right, for like a 3-day weekend, and it would be like less than $5.
And sometimes the older releases would be like either free or 99 cents or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
John says, did your video store have the beads hanging down for the adult section, or the saloon type doors?
Actually, I really don't know, because I was too young, right? So by the time that I was old enough to go in there, it was over with. Mm-hmm. But that was the thing. And for people that don't know, maybe if there's younger people watching, like, before the internet, that you had a video store, and especially if they were independently owned, even the ones that were chains. I mean, like, I remember Blockbuster coming in, and that was their thing, is we're not having an adult video section.
Well, they would also edit movies too. Sometimes.
Say what?
They would also edit movies too. Like if a movie was unrated, they would have the Blockbuster R-rated edited cut, like Requiem for a Dream. They did a specific Blockbuster cut.
Yes, exactly.
But another thing Blockbuster did, by the way, for those of you who don't know or don't remember, whenever they got movies in and they were checking movies in, they gave every single person a late fee. So that when you went up to the counter and they go, "Oh, you have a late fee," most people would be like, "Okay," and they would just check you out. So that was their way of getting extra money. Every single person would get a late fee, unless you said, I have a late fee. If you question it, they would go, "Oh, let me take it off." But if you didn't question it,
interesting.
So that's how they would make an extra, like, couple bucks on every rental. Scummy bastards.
Corporate bastards.
Exactly. Yeah. Palm Wild in the chat throws out a great question. What is our take on The Grandmother?
The short?
Yeah.
I like it. It's one of the things I liked about the Eraserhead. So I'd seen some of that stuff. You can see clips of that stuff in Pretty as a Picture, but I don't think it was until the Criterion Eraserhead.
No. Well, Criterion, yes, and Blu-ray, but back there, David Lynch's website did sell a thing called the short films of David Lynch.
Okay.
And that has almost all of them that's on the Eraserhead Criterion, except Cowboy and the Frenchman and the Lumiere film that he made. All the other ones should be on the Eraserhead disc. But Grandmother, I think it's great, and it shows you that he was being just as experimental as he was in Inland Empire years before. It's just that with film, he actually had to choose wisely what he was going to be shooting, as opposed to digital video, where he could just shoot 15 million hours and then have it be whatever.
Together, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that in a way, while film is more disciplined, I think for someone like David Lynch, he talks about how his parents never gave him coloring books as a kid because it would teach him how to color within the lines, and they wanted him to have open pages to just do whatever he wanted to do. But I think in a way Lynch works best when he has some parameters that he can bounce off from and go every which way. But if he goes too far, the parameters kick him back a little bit. For some, like in terms of Twin Peaks, that parameter was Mark Frost. Right? When you look at something, and that's why I think Fire Walk with Me, even though a lot of people love that movie, I think it's a masterpiece, that's David Lynch in Twin Peaks land just gone wild because there's nobody there. The only parameter he had was the running time.
Yeah.
If he didn't have that, who knows what was going to happen. But like Inland Empire is what happens when he just has free reign to do whatever he wants to do. Now you can say you love that movie. That's great. But you can see the difference when he, a struggling film student, doesn't have a lot of money, only has enough to make a 21-minute short, grandmother, here we go. But it's as surrealistic it is, it's also tight, it's concise. It's, you can see why he got put into the American Film Institute because of that, and Six Men Getting Sick and the ABC movie, right? Things like that. I just, you can just see how he operates with whatever is given to him. It's a different piece of work based on the parameters that is given to him. Going back to Dune, his parameter there was Dino De Laurentiis and no final cut.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a good I can't really explain. I need to see it again, but I watched all that stuff and I'd seen some of them before, and I'd seen pieces of some of them before, and it's good stuff. I mean, it still looks cool, and I mean, because they're shorts, they're much more of like experiences, kind of like how Eraserhead's more like an experience than like a rational.
But
like it's experimental, but like it's still. So he's I don't know if Lynch is, I can't remember, but like it's very like Dada-esque, like Dadaism, like early turn of the century, like absurdist kind of, but it also, I mean, I like stop motion, Six Men Getting Sick, like I love all that stuff.
But he brought it all back in season 3 too, the stop motion.
Yeah. I mean, those short films and The Grandmother are definitely a big part of who he is, and I like, they're dark and kind of creepy and cool. Like I would definitely recommend it and recommend checking them out. Definitely a huge talent back at at the time when he was he was a film student. I mean, it's like there's obvious that he had talent back.
Well, here's what I'll show you. You showed us the access guide. I'm going to show you this little nifty little book from back in the day.
Nice.
And this book came out right after season 1. And what it did though was it would talk about the alphabet and the grandmother. Now, back in the day, this is all you could find about it. You couldn't find these movies at the video store. So you would read about the grandmother and be like, oh, wow. And you would picture it in your head. What would this grandmother movie be like? And it's fascinating because you couldn't just go down to the warehouse and like rent the grandmother. What's really cool about this book though is, let's see if I can show this here. Let's see here. Let's see if we can see this here. The one-armed man in the dream. One chance heart. One chance heart between two worlds.
Yeah.
Right. So even back then, it was confusing as to what he was actually saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Here's a section on Dune here. Let's bring it full circle here where it says Lynch himself appears in a creative role as the film. According to Rafaela de Laurentiis, Lynch was uncompromising on the set. Blitz magazine reported that when a scene called for Duke Leto to blow smoke into an enemy's face, Lynch insisted the smoke be yellow, despite the fact that it was extremely toxic. Can I ask the actor to drill a hole in his cheek so I can put a little tube coming out of it? Lynch asked the producer. Please, I would do it myself.
That's hilarious.
Lynch would say, and it goes on to say, those who weren't lost by the labyrinth plot were grossed out by some of the special effects. Lynch would say, the experience taught me a lesson. I would rather not make a film than make one where I don't have final cut. That was a dark time for me. Boy, oh boy, I'll tell you. It says, but in a funny way, Dune has many things in common with Twin Peaks, besides the cast. It is a huge collection of characters, complicated plots, love affairs, and in both, dreams and prophecies are more important than any details of the plot.
Yeah. That's actually kind of brilliant.
Yeah. Let's see here. Rob says, here at home, cooking some food, enjoying the evening, having you guys chatting on in the background about one of my favorite subjects. Just great. Well, thank you for watching. Your sister says she watched Wild at Heart today. She's still trying to figure out how she feels about it. Well, that makes me think of one thing. So hang on a second. And Palm Wild says the grandmother is creepy.
Yeah, I like. I just rewatched Firewalk with Me as well. Or not?
All right. Well, let me.
Wild at Heart. I mean, yeah.
Let me clear this up for your sister here. And this is going to be slight spoilers for Wild at Heart, so I apologize. This is funny. This is the original review for Wild at Heart in my neighborhood newspaper here, which is kind of cool. I collected everything back then. Awesome. But one of the things is this will make you laugh. Silk Spectre Amaury says, Wild at Heart. It begins with the hero bashing open the skull of a black man who pulls a knife on him. After a brief prison term, he elopes cross-country with the girl he was fighting over. They have frequent and fairly explicit sex along the way. Her mother, who it transpires has tried to seduce him in a public toilet, sends several men to murder him. On the road, the lovers come across a bloody traffic accident. Meanwhile, a rich mobster sits on a toilet talking into his telephone as naked women attend him. During an armed robbery, one man is vividly decapitated. Another has a hand shot off, and as he crawls around in his own blood trying to find it, a dog trots out the back door holding it in his teeth. At different points in the film, both mother and daughter vomit, and a man is murdered in a voodoo rite. And the hero gets his nose swollen in a fist fight. I hope I haven't given you the wrong impression. Wild at Heart is a comedy. And it goes on to say, and believe it or not, it is pretty funny. So,
yeah.
It's interesting. It says Lynch is known to have scolded women on his set for swearing too much. And see, this is the David Lynch back of 86 to 92, where he, can you say that word? Can you say that word? Whereas now, if you watch the behind the scenes, he's cursing up ever since Inland Empire. He's been cursing ever since.
Yeah.
Which has been funny. You know what I want to see? Let's see if Criterion ever releases Wild at Heart, which I hope they do one day. This is what they need to put on Wild at Heart is the Industrial Symphony, the Dream of the Brokenhearted. They need to have that as a bonus feature because of the opening scene that he shot with Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern as Sailor and Lula. He shot an alternative breakup scene with them. I don't know if he ever meant to use it in Wild at Heart, but he shot an alternative breakup scene with them, and he incorporated it in the first 5 minutes of Industrial Symphony. So, and this is one of my favorite things. I've shown this before, but this is the TV Guide announcement for Fire Walk With Me that they were making the movie, and they spill the whole movie, like right here in the blurb, saying they're making it, and they're saying you get to see Lynch's tools of trade, titillation, mutilation, and deviation in tip-top form. Says the script focuses on the last 7 days. You'll get to see the murder in all its gruesome detail. Leland crushes the skull of Teresa Banks with a pipe. And then it goes on and says Donna Hayward is played by Maura Kelly as a result of Laura Flynn Boyle's unavailability, quote unquote. Series fans will be relieved to know that almost all of the major characters will appear on the big screen. This is before, it had been cut. With the addition of David Bowie as a time-traveling FBI agent, Chris Isaac as a time-bound Fed, and Harry Dean Stanton as the owner of a trailer park. Despite talk that Agent Dale Cooper was going to be phased out, he plays a major role in the film, though his partner in crime fighting, Harry Truman, returns for only a minor stint. Out of the picture completely is sultry sex kitten Audrey Horton. Now, can you imagine if something like that came out about season 3, a year before season 3 came out? I mean, it's they said TV Guide got to read the screenplay for Fire Walk with Me. So they get to say what this is the difference of the media now versus then.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the production of season 3 just handing over the entire 500-page script to Entertainment Weekly for them to do breakdowns?
No, that would have been terrible.
Yeah.
There's one positive thing I can say about today and the internet and stuff. It definitely helps me weed stuff out. So, I don't do anything that I like enough. I don't watch enough movies. I don't read enough books. I don't listen to enough music. But one thing about the internet being everything all at once, and everybody's got something to say, and there's reviews, and so it's I don't really pay attention to Rotten Tomatoes, but there's certain times you can kind of gauge things. But the internet helps me weed out a bunch of crap that I wouldn't normally. Once in a while a movie come out and be oh, well, that sounds interesting, and then maybe read a couple reviews and check a couple things and and okay, well, everybody says it's crap, so maybe I'll go revisit some movie that I've been meaning to, or that's when I'll spend the time to find something that. So there's good stuff out there all the time. It's just so that's the other thing too, is back in the day, you would go. I would go to the movies, and 9 times out of 10 you would have very little to go on. It's going to the movies on Friday. What are we going to see? Oh, well, there's this new Tom Cruise movie, or, I remember, so Pitch Black. You a fan of that movie?
Yeah.
So, you go to the theater. I remember going to the theater and be what's this? Oh, it's Blade 2. I'm Blade 2, I never saw Blade 1, but I heard it's, comic book, vampires, this might be kind of cool. And I remember going to see Blade 2, which is Guillermo del Toro, and really liking it a lot, and the Pitch Black and Rain of Fire. You could still go see a B sci-fi movie and it not be too bad. But back, especially if that was in the '90s or early 2000s, but the further you go back, it's kind of you would just go to the movies and you'd have a local paper, that was the thing. You'd have the local paper with the things, and there'd be a review or two, but you didn't have this 5 minutes after a movie hits theaters, there's 800,000 takes on the internet that, they either tell you everything or don't tell you anything, or I don't know.
Right. It's the same thing with diets. It's eggs are good for you. Eggs are bad for you. I can find an article that says every movie is a masterpiece, and then another article says it's not. I once had a friend growing up that just said, look, there's only one way to know if a movie is a masterpiece or not. Does it include a trailer park in it? If it does, it's a masterpiece. That was his criteria. Any movie, didn't even matter the quality. If it had a trailer park in it, it was considered a masterpiece in his eyes. And I thought, that's kind of genius. Here is an outtake of from Wild at Heart that's not in the movie. It's funny though, because it says think Twin Peaks was weird. Wait till you see Wild at Heart. But they let's see here. And then one of the quotes is, "You don't make a film like Wild at Heart unless you've got a dark side." And I love this little moment here from I think this is from like Rolling Stone, where they show Leland just screaming like that, and it says, "Yeah, he killed Laura Palmer." Like, right today, even on Twin Peaks Facebook pages, if you publish something that suggests that Leland was Bob, somebody inevitably in the comments write spoilers. Like, okay, all right, people, it's been like 30 years. Calm down.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I debated on my videos to put. So I'm gonna be redoing some stuff. Just some like title cards or whatever. So I'm gonna start putting like spoiler alert or something on my like page holders on my videos. But
I don't think you should have to. I mean, if anybody's gonna be, if someone's gonna be watching Take the Ring, they're not somebody who's watching it episode by episode.
Right. But I get those comments too. Like one guy, he was really nice, but after the Laura video, he was like, "Hey man, the video is great, but I don't know, like this is the one that you maybe should have put a spoiler alert on it." And I'm like, "Yeah, I get it." But part of me is just like, I'm 40 and I don't give a shit, and like it's like I hate so much of the internet and whatever. I shouldn't say that, but just some of the stuff like you got to say spoiler alert and you got to explain this and you got to do drop time codes to explain. I'm like, look, man, like this show's 30 years old. I'm 40 years old. Like you're lucky I got out of bed today.
I'm not. You know what? I do these discussion videos and then they're uploaded to YouTube. I don't do timestamps and all that stuff. I mean, I don't even know what we're gonna say from 1 second to the next. I'm not gonna. I like this interview here with Frank Silva. They ask him, "What about Bob's future?" Silva doesn't know. He says they make it up as they go along. Well, there you go. So, to all the people who say, "Oh, this has been a master plan," no, I don't think it was a master plan to put Josie in a doorknob.
There's no one has a master plan, and even the people that have master plans, all of it's constantly subject to change, like budgeting and if something's going to get picked up or not. Like if you're a writer or you're coming up with a concept, like you're like, okay, we need an idea for a TV show. Someone's going to give us money for a TV show. So you've got 2 months to write a pilot for a TV show. There's no way, it's just not physically possible that people sit down and, well, what if this gets picked up for 6 seasons? So what's my 6-season story arc? It's like, no, it's not how any of this stuff works.
Although TV stations today, they do kind of want like sort of a rough 5-year plan now.
Which is good, which is smart. But even Breaking Bad stuff, like they knew, Vince Gilligan knew kind of the large arc that he wanted to tell. But I mean, there's still 13 episodes a season. Like you don't instantly know everything. And these writers, they make stuff up and then they work it in and then they make more shit up and then they work it in. And then, now with Better Call Saul, they've got a team of continuity people to make sure that the ideas that they're coming up with don't contradict too much of the original show. And I don't know. So I think all that stuff's good. It's just this constantly changing medium. And now, like, if the new season of Game of Thrones started tonight and I wanted to do a recap video on it and publish it, later tonight, yeah, I might put like, hey, spoilers, this is brand new or whatever. But it's like, I'm going to make a video on Citizen Kane. Spoiler alert, everybody. I want to let everybody know that I'm going to spoil Citizen Kane. It's been around for 90 years and every movie's copied it. And you know what I mean? Every movie's copied it. It's the classic story you've heard a million times. It's like, why do I need to put a spoiler alert on a video about Citizen Kane? It's like, I just don't think about it even, you know?
You know, you're talking about being an old man with the video stores. This is really old, where it says this is back in the day in 1990. It says the most loyal fan may be 23-year-old Mila Roshwab, who woke up a day late after a tonsillotomy, get her tonsils out, whatever that word is. She woke up in a Maryland hospital. The first thing she said to her doctor was, "Did I miss Twin Peaks?" Because back then there was no DVR. You know, if you missed it, you were done. You were done. There was no, and they didn't. And you know what? The most effed up thing about Twin Peaks was they didn't do reruns.
Yeah.
So it aired.
They did reruns, and they changed the air night like twice.
Well, no, because season 1 was Thursday, and then when they re-aired it, I believe it was. I think it was still Thursday when they re-aired it over the summer.
Yeah.
But they did it straight through, and then over the summer they did it one more time, and then season 2 began. So it wasn't like, oh, I missed it, they're gonna rerun it in a couple of days. I mean, if you missed it, you were done. It was out. There was no, unless you recorded it, you know, play and record at the same time, right? Or knew how to set the timer on the VCR. Yeah. That was.
So I did that. By the way, I'm proud of my dad and being ahead of the curve. And so we actually taped quite a bit of, you know, like my brother and I would be in football or something, and you know, we would set the timer to get Star Trek: The Next Gen, you know, so we could watch it, you know, Sunday morning after our football game or whatever. So
I still have the entire run of Twin Peaks in the original format from the TV ABC.
That's amazing.
Commercials and all, and
awesome.
and I ran it in the VCR. I don't know, a short time ago. It's still perfect condition. It has not gone. I know. I wish I had. I used to have like a tape to DVD recorder, and I need to get one of those again because I need to put those before the tapes, because it was great. Because you know, people like to say, oh, you know, Lynch was busy with Wild at Heart during season 2, and that's why, you know, and all this nonsense. It's like, no, he shot the pilot, and then he went and shot Wild at Heart, and then when they were working on season 1, because there were 6 months in between. The pilot and season 1 being filmed. So in that time, he went and shot Wild at Heart. Then they were editing season 1 and editing Wild at Heart next door to each other. And so Lynch would go back and forth between. So when season 2 aired, Wild at Heart was already in the theaters. It came out August 19th, 1990.
Yeah.
So he wasn't busy with Wild at Heart. I think what it was that he just got disillusioned with the fact that ABC made him solve the Laura Palmer murder, and he just was like, I'm gonna just go do something else. I'd rather go make a table. But here's the original ad about when they were gonna solve Laura Palmer's murder.
Nice.
Finally, November 10th. Find out who killed Laura Palmer. Really?
Yeah, I've seen that ad before. That's sweet. It's still in a magazine.
And then
what magazine is that?
That was, I believe that was Entertainment Weekly when it came out.
Okay.
But, you know, for anyone who sees Jennifer Lynch today, right, and she's, you know, she's this amazing television director right now, and hopefully she'll make another feature film. But, you know, she's got that long hair with the dreadlocks and stuff like that. Yeah. This is her when she wrote The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer. Stunning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, a completely different young soul at this moment. But I mean, this was her when she wrote. You can't even believe this is the same person who's running around, you know, with the dreadlocks today, shooting Walking Dead episodes. But this is Jennifer Lynch back in 1990.
Oh, I forgot she did Walking Dead.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I see her. Her name pops up all the time, and I'm always just like, hell yeah.
No, it's great. And you know what? I actually I was listening to an interview once with I can't remember his name, but he's done a few feature films, but a lot of TV films. And the interviewers were saying, well, why are you doing TV? I mean, you're an accomplished director. Why don't you do more films? And he said, well, here's the thing. I can spend 2 years, maybe 3 years of my life setting up a film, getting the financing, getting the casting, making it, distribution, all that stuff. Or I can go to a television station who says, hey, look, we have 3 television movies that need to be made this year. And would you like to do 1 or 2 of them? He doesn't have to seek out the financing. He can cast it. He makes it. He knows it's going to be out that year. he told the interviewers, you know what, when I went to film school, I want to be a filmmaker. I don't want to sit there and spend the most of my time writing scripts that aren't going to be produced, trying to find financing that's not going to come in. I want to go into a company and get projects handed to me for me to film, because I'm a director. And I thought, that's not a sellout. That actually is a very smart way to make a career. I mean, even Martin Scorsese will say in interviews, like, I like my career, I love my films, but he would trade them all to go be a director in the 1930s, where you walk in, you're under contract for a studio, and they give you 6 movies to direct that year, and he gets to make a Western, a musical, and a gangster movie. He wants to work with that kind of speed, because then you're just firing on all cylinders all the time, as opposed to spending most of your time doing the stuff that filmmakers don't want to do.
Yeah, I remember way back, it's like, oh yeah, I'd love to, because I really like video, and I've found over the years that I like editing a lot more, obviously. There's part of me at one time that was like, yeah, like I would love, that's kind of my dream, would be to like make a movie, but I was having a discussion with someone, and it was basically the same thing. It was just like, look, like, being a filmmaker, like, these people, especially nowadays in the industry nowadays, like, you spend all your time in like board meetings and pitching. You're constantly pitching, constantly looking for financing, constantly having to do like basically like paperwork shit. Not paperwork, but it's just like the stuff that's fun about filmmaking, like going to shoot something, or like I used to shoot concerts and punk shows and things, just camcorder stuff. But like the fun part is like getting in there and doing it, and then taking it home and chopping it up and putting it together. And like, that's the fun part. It's like, man, like you said, a lot of these guys and gals got to spend, months just trying to convince somebody to give them the money and this and that. And then even then it's like a miracle if it actually gets done. And I can totally see that, like, in a way, a TV director now, like what Jennifer Lynch is doing now, is what Martin Scorsese was talking about doing, how he wants to be back in the 30s. Because now it's like, you can go do an episode of Walking Dead, which is an hour long, and production value is almost kind of like a movie in a way. And you can go do, go to all these projects that are existing and functioning and already rolling. So,
I mean, Jennifer Lynch, honestly, I know it's not her original work, but she's more prolific as a director now than she ever was as a theatrical filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's doing so much work now, whereas, like, obviously I know she took a break after Boxing Atlanta, but even Surveillance and Chained, I mean, it's like, it takes a long time to get those made. And Surveillance only got made because David Lynch agreed to put his name on it as executive producer. But now that's the one with Bill Pullman and Juliana Margulies. And
I don't think I saw that one.
Part of my French here, but when David Lynch saw it, he said, I had no idea my daughter was the sickest bitch I ever knew. Like, that's pretty funny.
Is that the one that opens with it's like a murder scene? She did one.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried to watch that with my wife, and we were just not. I was shocked how shocked I was, and we had to like take a break from it. I can't remember if I ended up finishing it, but I was like, oh, this is Jennifer Lynch, this will be cool. And I was like, oh yeah, this is Jennifer Lynch, this is going to be crazy. And we like trying to eat dinner, and like I think I saw it, and it was like on Netflix or something, and it was like, oh cool, like a cops and like a murder mystery or some sort of throwaway suspense film. This might be good to watch on a Friday night. So we're both exhausted trying to eat like Italian, Italian food, and then that scene starts, and I was just like, oh my god, not right now, can't do this.
We were talking, and the topic of remakes came up. And she said to me, Cameron, if I was to remake any film, which film would you want me to remake? And I thought for a second, and I was like, well, let's not go with the obvious, but let's go with something that would be so much in her wheelhouse that she'd be able to knock it out of the park in a different way. And I said, I honestly would love to see your take on Valley Girl. Because it would be so unlike what people expected Jennifer Lynch to do. Although, but being brought up in Los Angeles, in that environment with two creative artists as your parents, and the punk scene and all that stuff, she would totally be able to knock that out of the park.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me just go over a couple more quick things and then we'll take some final questions and we'll wrap this up. Many people, I got to tell you, Jeremiah, many people commented that our last video was 20 seconds shorter than our previous video. It was like almost to the exact minute.
Yeah.
So that's the way we do things around here.
Yeah, it was totally planned, everyone.
So it says, tweaking Twin Peaks one last time. This is Dan Benj from Otisville, New York. A cliffhanger for a canceled series. How could David Lynch play such a nasty trick on us Peaks freaks? What happens to Agent Cooper? Did Benjamin Horne die? Does Leo escape the spiders? Will we ever find out? And then this is my favorite. Is one. This is how the TV guide labels Bob now. Is a giant owl, which is great.
Oh, that's cool.
Will he strike again? It says.
Yeah.
It says jeers. Remember they used to do cheers and jeers in the TV guide?
And jeers. Yeah.
Well, TV guide gives jeers to the last episode of Twin Peaks.
What?
Knowing that after 2 seasons the show was not coming back, Frost and Lynch chose not to tie up the loose plot ends, but instead introduced a half dozen others. Who dies when Thomas Eckhart's bomb went off in the bank? What will happen to Norma and Ed now that Nadine has come to her senses? Will Ben Horne's collision with the Hayward's fireplace end his checkered career? And most annoyingly, how will Agent Cooper remain the show's hero now that he's been taken over by Bob? See, again, nobody knew that the doppelganger got out. They just assumed that, like, Agent Cooper got possessed by Bob. Given its idiosyncratic details, Twin Peaks was never going to appeal to a mass audience, but it did find favor with a small, devoted group who relish its weirdness. In the end, Frost and Lynch couldn't even play fair with them.
Yeah, it's so funny. I remember same video store, same record store, same guy. After I watched all of Twin Peaks, and I was like, "Hey, man, I watched all of Twin Peaks," and he was like, "Yeah, what'd you think of that ending?" And I was like, "I can't believe they ended it that way." Because again, I didn't really know context. Like, I didn't know that they knew that they were getting canceled. And talking to this dude, it was the first time he kind of like spelled it out. He's like, so for years I didn't know if this was true, but he was like, yeah, basically they forced him to reveal Laura Palmer's killer, and then it dragged on for a little bit, and then they knew it was getting canceled, so this is kind of like a fuck you to the to the crowd that forced him to reveal the killer. It's like, all right, well, you guys want everything all tied up in a neat little bow. I'm going to end this in the most, which he basically did the same thing with season 3.
But I would argue that, yeah, you can read it that way. But I also have heard that much like the ending of season 1, which has a ton of cliffhangers as well, right? That they were hoping that by putting all these cliffhangers that ABC would renew them at least for a season 3.
Yes, which I think I think it's a bit of both, because they would be done, like, what if the new night, or remember I think you told me, no, I remember so they revealed the Laura Palmer killer, and they let them air like whatever 4 or 5 more episodes, and then that was going to be it. And then the fans petitioned, and people were like,
Josie,
so they ended up
the Josie and the Doorknob was the final episode.
Yes, right. And then fans, right? Fan petitions, or people
now,
were like,
the last 6 episodes were already filmed and done. It's just that they ABC said, we're not showing this show anymore.
Okay.
So they pulled it. And again, at this time, I believe if it was today, the show would have been pulled, and they would have just done a Blu-ray release with those, and then use that as the selling point. Watch the last 6 episodes you didn't see air, but back then there was no way to see those other episodes if they didn't air.
Yeah,
so there was this whole petition that happened, and finally ABC relented. And then a month later, they played 4 episodes, and then stopped it again. And then 3 weeks later, so they played the last 2 episodes as a Sunday night movie.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was combined into one thing. But yeah, you know, it's funny though, because I still remember my friend calling up during the break and going, I'm hearing rumors that the girl from License to Drive shows up in this show. And I'm like, really? That's crazy. And so here I am, you know, working on a film about her character, which is kind of funny.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, I think it is both as well. But I'm glad. I mean, again, you have to say this in retrospect, but in a way, it's like, I don't know if they would have, what they would have done in season 3 in 1991 with this idea of 2 Coopers and all that kind of thing. I don't know, but I've also heard that they were going to wrap that up pretty fast in like a couple episodes, and then
I heard that as well. So that's what's so funny is the entire mystery box set came out in 2014, and you know, I watched it a million times in high school, several times in my 20s, but not so much in the last, like, you know, 5 or 10 years. And then the box set came out, and I remember sitting down and just watching all of it, and Fire Walk with Me and The Missing Pieces on Blu-ray, all of it together. And I was just like, man, I'm glad it ended this way. Like, I'm glad that I don't know, not that I'm glad, but like, I just felt fulfilled, even with the cliffhanger, even with all of that, because Fire Walk with Me is kind of an epilogue to a little bit, and just kind of revisiting all of it as a big chunk in HD for the first time in a long time. That was like a real moment for me. And I just, I mean, part of me thinks that kind of like the better to burn out than fade away, like some of the, you know, proverbial crap, but like part of me is glad it ended when it did, and it fizzled out the way it did, and it's definitely helped with the cult status and every little element of this, the Bravo bringing it back and doing Log Lady intros. And you know, then several years later, like the DVDs come out with some new like retrospective stuff. It's like, and you know, you've got your books, and you know, the Laura Palmer books got amazing staying power, I think. You know, my sister, who's on the chat, you know, references it all the time and said that it really changed her life in a lot of ways. And so I think all these little pieces just kind of like reinforce itself. The only thing I wanted to ask you, I'm going to kill my cat. I don't know if you can hear my cat.
That's all right. No, it's fine.
Oh my God, I'm going to kill it. Anyway, so here's a question for you. Speaking of writing, speaking of continuity, whatever, I've been meaning to ask you this for a long time. The pilot episode. So every time you hear about Twin Peaks now, and someone's willing to talk about Lynch and Frost, they always talk about how the original intent was to be an unsolvable mystery. And I talk about that in my Laura video, and the idea of Hazel Irene Drew as an unsolved mystery. And so the idea was that the murder would draw people into the show and that mystery, and then it would introduce you to the town of Twin Peaks, right? So right. What I have a hard time with is, how long do you think that idea lasted? Because everything that is written in the pilot and even the first couple episodes, it's like, okay, if this is about drawing us into a quirky town and then telling us the story of the town, so some people think that because the original idea was to never tell you who Laura Palmer's killer was, and supposedly Lynch was upset because they revealed who Laura Palmer's killer was, then why would you have 15 hours of shit between inception and revealing the killer? I mean, everything is written to that.
Well,
If it's about Donna, she's talking about Laura, and if it's about James, she's talking about Laura, and then there's Maddie's cousin, and who's obviously a surrogate for Laura, and like every single line of dialogue and every single plot piece, and Agent Cooper and the investigation and all that stuff, everything is taking you in that direction. So I'm trying to figure out like who's being disingenuous here. Like,
well, I hear Lynch say that all the time, right? It never was supposed to be solved. Now,
I can see that in the writing room in 1987, maybe. By the time you're shooting stuff, like,
yeah, well, the thing is, though, is that Kyle MacLachlan, a lot of people don't know this, but when he signed on to do Twin Peaks with ABC, they locked him into a 5-year contract. Can you imagine Twin Peaks being on in 1995 still? Like what season 5 would have been like of Twin Peaks?
Yeah.
If I was to meet David Lynch and we were to have like a conversation like we're having right now, like a big, in-depth conversation, I would say, David, I love you to pieces, but sometimes you try to create this mystique that you don't need to. This whole idea of Laura Palmer's murder was never supposed to be solved. Okay. Well, here's the thing. I would agree with that only if I felt like the murder was solved too quickly. But when the reveal of Leland happens, it's organic. It just, it feels like that's the natural next step we need to go.
Yes.
Now, if Lynch really, truly, this is my mic drop here. If Lynch truly believed that the Laura Palmer murder should never be solved, then why make an entire movie about who killed Laura Palmer?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and at least with Fire Walk with Me, I could be like, well, the cat's out of the bag, and so he's obsessed with Cheryl Lee, and not obsessed, but you know what I mean. But that's the thing. It's like I've heard that for years and years, and every time I sit down to watch Twin Peaks, I'm like, I think that might have been him and Mark Frost in 1986 or whatever, and they're sitting down and they're like, and Mark Frost is like, hey, Hazel Irene Drew, from where I grew up, there's this thing and it's an unsolved, and he's like, yeah, and then David Lynch, they probably liked that movie Laura, right?
And they liked River's Edge and all that.
Yeah. So like, okay, cool. And I can see that like maybe being the genesis of writing, like, okay, look, we're going to start with this murder mystery, but really what's going on is like what's going on in the town. Like, so kind of like in the same way Blue Velvet, like, so there's a mystery, right? Like the ear and whose ear it is and who's missing or whatever. But that's found out in a roundabout. The story is really about Jeffrey and Dorothy and all that stuff. And it just kind of so happens to be that the ear is her husband. And so
that's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting because I think the ear mystery is more or less what Lynch is saying about what he wished for the Laura mystery, that it would just kind of fade into the background. But the problem is you've created in Twin Peaks, you said every scene is about Laura Palmer, that if you were to try to do that, fade it into the background, the show would have been canceled even sooner than it did. Because nobody's going to sit there for 4 seasons and still care about who killed Laura Palmer. Nobody would care that long. You have to solve it. Now, and I've said before, in retrospect, they could have brought Wyndham Earle in earlier, which Frost has alluded to. I would have loved, in a way, to, even though I like Wyndham Earle and Annie and all that stuff, eliminate all of that. And after the reveal of Leland dying and who killed Laura Palmer, to then spend the back half of season 2 doing Fire Walk with Me, because you have the whole cast there. So bring in have the next episode, instead of it saying 3 days later and have Leland's wake, and have the entire town there celebrating the death of a man who raped and murdered several women. Begin it with Laura Palmer walking down the street, Donna, and then Lara Flynn Boyle comes out of the house, and then we get to see her relationship with Josie and Ben Horn and all, and then then season 2 would conclude with Laura Palmer getting killed. show's canceled. We have this nice circular ending. Everyone goes home happy, and that would have been a way to do it too.
Yeah, I
just don't believe it. I don't believe it. I think that this is like 25 years later reflection of like, yeah, it probably was a mistake to solve it because then we didn't have a lot afterwards, and it took a while to get the whole second half going and that type of thing. But I would argue those 5 episodes in between Laura being solved and Wynn and Merle kicking in, do those episodes have a lot of drive? No. But are they bad episodes? I would say no, because they're still very well written, acted. They're funny. There's still moodiness. There's still mystery. So yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
No, just right out of the gate.
Major Briggs is kidnapped.
So it's like Wynn and Merle. Yeah, it's a couple more episodes before you actually see him, but those seeds are planted. So there is Wynn and Merle's already working in the background, but 2. You jump right into Major Briggs and his disappearance and setting things up for Doug Puzz. And so I love all that.
I mean, stuff. I was sad when David Lynch came out during the press beginning of season 3 and was like denouncing season 2 as being terrible and that type of thing, because I would argue that, and this is going off one of Rob's questions here, is asking us, what if we could choose one episode out of every season as being our favorite? I would say, there's a lot in season 2, but I would say, the Maddie death episode of season 2 is perhaps the best episode of the entire series, seasons 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably.
Yeah. And either that one for me, it would be either that one or the finale.
Or so for me, I would say season 1. If I have to pick one, I would say there's 2. I mean, not counting the pilot. Season 1 is either the episode 2 with the rock throwing in the dream, but I also think the season 1 finale, written and directed by Mark Frost, is one of the most stunning finales I've ever seen. It's all killer, no filler. Kyle MacLachlan's there acting like James Bond inside One-Eyed Jacks. It's him interviewing or interrogating Jacques Renault. It's great stuff. That epic, getting shot at the door. It's fantastic. Season 2, I think there are a lot of great episodes, but I think the Maddie episode is just wow. And season 3, it's hard because it's all of a piece, more or less, but I probably would say either episode 14 or probably episode 14. That's the one with the dream, right? With the
Monica Bellucci
dream and the Jackrabbit's Palace and stuff. I just thought that episode was just like jaw dropping. Obviously, episode 8 is great, but I kind of look at that as like a standalone kind of piece.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, mine is obvious. For me, it's totally episode 8, but yeah, it's almost like its own movie. It's almost like a.
I guess I'm trying to think of something that's not the obvious,
Yeah, of course. I think that We Live in a Dark Age episode might be mine.
Which one's that again?
That is I don't know if that's the title. I want to say maybe number 6.
It's when the kid gets killed and all that.
The kid gets killed, and Ike the Spike and Janie E's got her great monologue, and like I don't enjoy the kid getting killed. I don't enjoy that stuff, but like there's something about that episode that just everything like clicks for me. You get the shot of I believe it's the end of that episode is the transmitter box in Argentina disappearing, and I don't know. There's a lot of really good ones. Most of my favorite have to be 1 through 7. There's several parts of 1 through 7, but I like 16 when Dougie comes back, or when Eddie Vedder in the end of the Audrey story and Dougie wakes up, and I love that one.
But I thought episodes 1 through 4 of season 3 were like really like the strongest opening. I mean, it set you up for a series that, in some ways, yes, it led you to it, but it also I don't know if season 1 through 4 made you really feel like this was gonna really go somewhere too. You know what I mean? And it does go somewhere. It just doesn't go, I think, to the places that episodes 1 through 4 set you up for.
Yeah. I gotta say, you know, besides part 8, you know, that 1 and 2, and on the Blu-ray you have the option of watching 1 and 2 together as a movie,
which is the way it was opening night.
So I remember after opening night and seeing the first 2, and this was still like, I had just heard that they were releasing 3 and 4. Like, I didn't know if that was true. I didn't know if I was going to be able to watch it on my. I didn't know about 3 and 4, but I remember watching 1 and 2 as a movie, and I love the Chromatic song. I know that there's like Cooper's barely in it or whatever, but like I was so.
But you could argue it's the only time in the series we actually get Agent Cooper.
Right, and it feels like Twin Peaks and that Chromatics song, and James was always cool, and Shelley in the Roadhouse, and it's like things are obviously changed and obviously different, and I don't know where this is going. I don't know how this is going to play out, but like that was my like sit back, sipped on a beer, and just like fucking A, Twin Peaks is back, baby. Like
that's exactly how I felt.
So thrilled after that first 2 hours.
But then I got the tip off that they dropped 3 and 4 online on the Showtime website, and so I went. Yeah. I went stream, and so I watched all 4 in a row, and then I immediately did like an instant reaction video. And it was funny because I guess a lot of people didn't know you could watch 3 and 4 online. So people were like, "How did you see these episodes in advance?"
Yeah, right.
So Tony in the chat says, "Do you guys hear anything about Lynch's animated script he submitted to Netflix?" I don't know anything about that.
Me either.
But listen, Lynch could submit, you know, his grocery list to Netflix and they'll approve it. So, let's see. Wilton says those old news that you're reading definitely show that Frost and Lynch did on season 3 was part of the show's structure. Let's see here. Thomas says, I'm glad they resolved Laura's more than they did. I hate stories that prolong stuff like that. It usually turns things into a dragged out hoax. Let's see here. Palm Wild says, why kill off Leland? He should have been alive all through season 2. I agree. I think you could have done a really great exploration of Leland in jail, having Bob out of him, and you could do like the Ben Horn turnaround with Leland, like in a cell. You know, that would have been great. That would have given Ray Wise something really great to do. And I agree with Thomas. Why so little Leland in season 3, especially since he was one of the big proponents of Twin Peaks coming back. And in fact, David's revealed to Ray Wise, he was the first person he told. He said, Ray, the town's still there. So that was shocking that they gave him one line, pretty much.
Yeah, that really kind of broke my heart a little bit. It was fine because I was into the story, and I really didn't, because you can't really do a whole lot with him. Like he's dead in the real world, and yeah, he's in the lodge, I guess, or his doppelganger is, or whatever. So, but it's funny. So I love Ray Wise so much. I'm a huge fan. Like I said, RoboCop's like my favorite movie. He was in a Disney movie called The Journey of Natty Gann.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, with a young John Cusack and Meredith Salinger.
And he's great right now in Fresh Off the Boat. He's hilarious on that show.
Oh, cool. So I haven't seen that. But so I met him at a convention recently, or I got his autograph, and I was just trying to make small talk. Like, I didn't really know what to say, but I was just like, I was like, oh, I love RoboCop and this and this. And I was like, well, I'm a huge Twin Peaks fan, and I started positive. I was like, yeah, I'm so happy to see you in it and that you were in it. And I go, I wish you were in a little bit more. And he looked at me and he was like, yeah, you and me both, bud. It's like, yeah.
I think they could have
So
done a lot. I think they could have done a lot with him. Honestly, I think that it could have been him and the one-armed man trying to guide Dougie.
that would have been crazy. That would have been crazy awesome too.
But
But
it would have worked narratively. It really would have worked because we get that kind of doppelganger moment of him in season 2 finale, and
well, and maybe it's him helping out, and he's the one that tells him to find Laura. So
right.
if you're a unified theory fan of, if you have a unified theory of season 3, or you have a theory that you like, I mean, that's not in there for no reason. Like the that's in the first scene, and revisited again from a different angle. But anyway, yeah, Ray Wise was cool, and he so I was just kind of joking, and he just kind of joked back with me like, "Oh yeah, that'd have been great to be in there more." But he was just like, "Man, he's like, there was like 300 people in the cast, or 250 or whatever it is." And I was just like, "Yeah, I mean, that's one of like the frustrating things. Like, man, I would have cut out so much of Las Vegas just for a couple more minutes with Ray Wise,
or even a couple more minutes of him and Sarah."
Yeah, I mean, that's the frustrating thing that we'll never ever, because of the nature of it, we'll never be able to like reconcile.
But I think it comes down to the Inland Empire effect. I think that Lynch likes to work now in vignettes. And I think that was his whole thing. Let me just do a bunch of vignettes and kind of string them together. And then, but the through line is Cooper, Dougie, doppelganger. And that's the only real through line through the entire show. You do get a beginning, middle, and end to, at least in this incarnation of Cooper's journey. At least it stops at a certain point.
Yeah.
Everything else is just, we drop in here for this, and we drop in here for that. It's nobody else really gets a clear story arc.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was his choice, and that was a decision they made. And I think it works on many levels, and I think it doesn't work on other levels. It all depends on what the argument or what the discussion is. You can make a case for it. You can make a case against it.
Yeah. And it depends on my mood too. So what's funny, it's something else I want to bring up. I don't know if you ever, because you and I, looks like we have now contributed, and just in the last month, 6-8 hours of breaking down Twin Peaks.
So far by 8 hours.
Yeah, which is great. I've been sharing it with some friends of mine that are into just like podcasts and stuff. I'm like, hey, like, they didn't know I was doing this stuff, and I sent them the links. I was like, hey, I've been on this show, and these are actually discussions are pretty good and in depth. But so the David Lynch book, Room to Dream, and other times he's talked about this too. But the idea of he says that his films and Twin Peaks is about surrendering to the moment, and to overthink or analyze the narrative, or to try to give an explanation to it, is destructive. And so I just want to say, like, I get all of that, and that's how I do watch the stuff. Like, even now, even in Mulholland Drive, watching it, knowing what's going to happen, knowing my theories of stuff or whatever, like, in the moment, I'm in the moment still.
You surrender to the moment.
I'm still kind of like emotionally involved, and there's still things that confuse me, and still things that scare me, and still things that, but at the same time, it's kind of like we were saying first. It's like, all right, Mr. Lynch, but at the same time, you're like, you're showing me a nightmare, and you're expecting me to, like, you're showing me a scrambled image. Like, you're showing me a Picasso painting, and you're expecting me to, like, not think about it later. I mean, that's how it is with me. I watch Twin Peaks or Lynch films, and it's like, I'm in the moment, but then afterwards, like, I just can't help it. Like, my brain wants to, like, put things together in my mind, and it's like, I don't think that anybody's an asshole for like trying to put a theory together,
No, I don't
or
think he feels that way at all. I just think that he believes, everybody is right because it's how they. There's no
yeah,
actual answer.
because he's into like death of the author and that kind of stuff where uh
But look
you
at
know
something like look at something like Blue Velvet, right? I made the point when everybody says, "Well, Lynch is like Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive," and again, Mulholland Drive is only like that because Mulholland Drive was not picked up as a TV series. It would have been a different thing altogether. But if you look at Lost Highway, Inland Empire, that's David Lynch. Well, we've also said that David Lynch is The Straight Story. We've also said that David Lynch is Blue Velvet. Now, if you look at Blue Velvet, almost everything in Blue Velvet is wrapped up at the end of that movie. Right? If you look at Wild at Heart, almost every single thing in Wild at Heart is wrapped up. Yes, he's working with an adaptation of a book, but still he injected a lot of himself into it. So he can do character, plot, realism, surrealism together and still have it be a cohesive whole. He has just got it in his brain for the last 20 years or so to just literally do what he used to do, before, like with the grandmother and the alphabet, of just throwing it on a wall and seeing what works and that. I would just say that when he was working, I think that impression works better on a smaller scale, like the alphabet and the grandmother. I think once you start approaching 2 hour, 3 hour, 18 hours, I think you need to, it's almost like this is something I'm never going to release, but something I do for fun whenever I'm bored is work on like my cut of season 3. If I, and the way I approach it is this: it's not me just being an asshole saying, "Oh, I don't like this, I don't like that." Back in the day, like filmmakers like Ingmar Bergman used to do like big 5-6 hour TV films, Scenes from a Marriage, Fanny and Alexandra. And then when they bring it over to the States, they obviously couldn't play that in movie theaters, so they would have to whittle them down and make them theatrical. So the way I approach it is, David Lynch made this epic Twin Peaks movie. They're going to go do a U.S. theatrical cut, no longer than, let's say, 180 minutes, maybe 3.5 hours. I'm in charge of making the U.S. theatrical cut. And so I'm not going in there just being an asshole. I'm like, okay, how would I tell this story and convey everything Lynch and Frost want to say and pace it well to give that U.S. theatrical experience to an audience? So that's kind of like my thing. And it's I have no idea. I've totally forgot where I'm going with this. But I mean, it's a fun experience. But you quickly see that like you could have chiseled that 18 hours down to 12 episodes, 13 episodes, and probably had more fans, even though it was less material, because you would have brought all the good stuff closer together. Now, anybody who says that's all good stuff, I agree, it's all good. However, like I said, you can take out 2 seconds here, 1 second there, and nobody notices, right? It's just sometimes I feel like when I watch season 3, I sometimes feel like when you see a filmmaker's rough cut of something, it's paced well in a lot of areas, and then other times you go, well, it could be a little more tighter in this one little scene here. We didn't have to have them staring at each other for 6 edits for 2.5 minutes long, right? And so when Lynch is screaming at the people on Showtime, right, who cares how long a scene is and all that stuff, I get what he's saying. I get what the fans love him for that kind of stuff. But I can also see from another point of view, yeah, pacing is important sometimes. And do we really need to have Candy swatting at a fly for 8 minutes? I don't know. But this goes back all the way back to season 2. I mean, I always talk about how my friends' families completely deserted Twin Peaks after Senior Jewel Cup coming back into the room. I heard about you. They just dumped the show. They said, forget this nonsense. And they were done. Like season 2 opening, believe it or not, turned more people off of Twin Peaks than the reveal of Laura's murder. Nobody really liked that opening of season 2.
Which is bizarre because it's it's amazing. I love it.
But you see, again, you're talking about it where it's like, you know, you're watching it right after season 1. You can go on the DVDs, the Blu-rays, and that type of thing. When you had to wait 3 months in between, and that was your reintroduction to the show, was I heard about you, and that milk will cool down. No, the regular casual fans of Twin Peaks were out. They were done. And so hilarious. And anyway, so I'm totally forgetting where I was going with all this stuff, but I'm just saying that Lynch, if you look at Blue Velvet, if you look at Wild at Heart, right? If you look at the Twin Peaks pilot, if you look at Elephant Man and Eraserhead, he knows how to pace things. The Straight Story, he knows how to pace things. Mulholland Drive, he knows how to pace things for an audience to keep them engaged. I think that, again, I have no you know, real insight into this, except to say that I think that what they had, the 9 episodes they had that they were going to do, and Lynch wanted to do more episodes. I don't think they extended the script. I think they just shot it to take their time. Because I would say the story that we get in season 3 is a 9-episode story. I think you could have extended it to about 13 episodes with your pacing. But to go 18, like, I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that loves it, and then there's another part of me that goes, it really should have been 4 or 5 episodes shorter. And I think it would have gone over a lot better for a lot of people. I think that it hurts. I know a lot of people say, no, it doesn't. But I think sometimes the pacing does hurt the rewatchability of season 3 at times. Because, like, there are some, like we talked about Wild at Heart, how it's really fast at the beginning. Then they get to Big Tuna, Texas, and it slows down, right? I love that. So I'm not saying, oh, he should have speeded up the Dougie eating chocolate cake scenes. I mean, you could make the argument that those scenes shouldn't be in there, but I like those scenes. But no, they should be that pace because Dougie is slow himself. But there are other things that maybe should have been a little faster that are still the length of Dougie eating chocolate cake. It just, the whole thing feels like a rough cut. Like, here's everything we shot, and we're gonna, Dwayne Dunham, we're gonna go in there later and tighten it all up. But right now, this is what we shot. And I think that they had to, they originally they weren't planning to have it be 18 1-hour episodes. Some episodes were supposedly going to be 35 minutes, and some episodes were going to be an hour and 10 minutes, and it was going to be all wherever Lynch decided to cut it. But then in the final, they decided to just make everyone more or less an hour. Yeah. So I think in a way that contributed to the pacing. Is let's keep them all to about 51 minutes to an hour. So, hey, if it's a little long here, it's a little long here, But I think when you do throw it all on a timeline, which I'm sure you've done, and looked at it as one continuous piece, you can see a little here, a little there. You could just snip, 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 and you're not losing anything of real quality. It's just like an extra second of staring. And that right there almost takes you down 45 minutes. It's amazing. Anyway, but let's just go through it real quick here. Yeah. Let's see. Well, it says, I totally believe the first episode of season 2 alienated many people. Definitely did.
Yeah. Since you mentioned it, I do remember seeing it. So again, I had the VHS tape, so I didn't really know about season 1 versus 2 and where it stopped and where it ended. I just I remember getting that, oh, Cooper got shot. Now we're going to find out what happened. And okay, so there's an old man and he's got milk, and it's just oh no, he's coming back in the room. Well, he's got something important to say. Oh no, he just gives him the thumbs up.
But see, that's all a riff because at because of the end of season 1, he tells Andy on the phone, excuse me, I got room service. So that, of course, clues into David Lynch. Oh, I could have a room service guy come in. And of course it ties in with the giant showing up because it looks like they're kind of parallel with each other and all that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think season 2 opening, I like that episode, but I do think that episode does suffer from pacing problems too. I think that, you know, having Andy just after getting hit with the board for like 3 minutes it's a little long. But I mean, it rivals the Mandy or Candy with the fly thing. It's just like Lynch sometimes likes to push things a little longer.
Yeah,
You know?
totally. He's yeah, definitely.
Wilton says he believes that the pacing was intentional. Of course it was. It absolutely was. But I'm saying if that's because Lynch had the time to do that. But if he was to have, if he had to have cut it down to like 13 episodes or 14 episodes, he could have done it in a way where you probably wouldn't have lost all that much. I mean, you would have lost some things, but I think in the grand scheme of things, you would have been more of on an elated high at the end of like 14 episodes.
Yeah. The only thing I just want to say, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, and I think it's accurate. The only thing is, in rewatching it as many times as I have, I will say, like, I personally think it gets a little better with. So now some of those quiet, extra long moments that are basically too long, like now I don't mind them because now I've got all this other context. So even like Dr. Jacoby, I remember my buddy was like, like season 1 or the return episode 1 or maybe 2 when he's painting the shovels, and it's just like doing, then he paints one side and then he turns it around and like it's almost like real time, right? My buddy's like, I'm not sitting through 8 hours or 18 hours of Dr. Jacoby painting fucking shovels, man.
But see, the thing is, but if that shovel thing was not just a trolling moment, but actually was leading to something revolutionary within the story, I think that scene would have been more forgivable.
Right. Well, but now, like, it is. Like, you could argue that that is the genesis of Norma and Ed getting back together, and the fact that, well, I mean, Jacoby's got this show and he's got to sell these shovels, and it's his like inspirational message that gets Nadine out of. I mean, I could argue that the Nadine's actually kind of fallen for Dr. Jacoby, and that.
But Ed and Norma were already together at the end of season 2. It's just like.
Well, no, but then Nadine woke up.
No, I know that, but what I'm saying is like, it didn't take much to get them back together again. It wasn't like a huge. Like,
no, but it's the catalyst for what let Nadine let herself go a little bit. You know what I mean?
No, I understand. I just think that.
But I'm saying, but here's my point. My point is now when I watch Dr. Jacoby painting shovels, I've got, oh, right, because it's like there's Dr. Amp and like this is going to lead to like maybe Nadine and stuff. But then I've also got the like secret history stuff, like because in my mind I'm like, well, what's Dr. Jacoby been doing? It's like, oh, well, he did this and he did this and he's not a psychiatrist anymore, and and so it's like, I guess what I'm saying is all that dead space that like the first time through was like kind of boring, first several times through. Now it's like my mind is occupied about is filling all that shit in with context, right? Which again, I normally criticize movies for if you have to make a backstory up in your mind for the shitty movie you're watching on screen to work, then it's a shitty movie, right? In my opinion, it's like people are like, I'll watch like a new Star Wars movie and be like, what the hell was that all about? Like that didn't make any sense. Like, yeah, but if you read the novel, like General Grievous has a ship that it does this and this and this, and that's what's like, yeah, but like I shouldn't have to read a book to enhance the movie good enough to know what's going on. So even though I'm making that argument with Twin Peaks right now, basically, but
I never had a problem with the Jacoby shovel thing. I thought it was a little funny but mean, that it basically just led up to like some commercial that we saw twice in the show. I remember when it first came on, people were saying online, like, I bet you, the 5 has something to do with Glastonbury Grove, and they're gonna, there's like Dr. Jacoby's probably been on this like undercover mission with Major Briggs to do something. Like
Yeah.
honestly, it's like the importance of what Lynch gives us with the shovel, that scene. You do feel like it's the introduction. Is this the second? I believe it's the second. It's the second scene of the show.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you really do think it's got to do something with Cooper, something having to do with the, maybe Laura left the tape saying something about the lodges or something like that in Jacoby's coconut or something like that, and he's waiting 25 years and he's now going to enact this plan.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it just ends up being like a thing, which again is funny, but it definitely was the moment where I remember thinking, oh, they're really not just toying with the audience, they're kind of trolling the audience too.
Yeah, like some of this stuff literally doesn't go anywhere, and if it does, it's like it's a joke that takes 6 episodes, a 6-episode arc to tell like a simple joke, right? But I agree.
Yeah, but that stuff doesn't bother me. I just think that overall there's just little moments that you could just cut down just a little bit, and I don't mean like taking out a line, or I mean just this little stuff, like even just like a second here, if you take out a second out of every scene, you pretty much knock the show down by an hour.
Yeah.
Anyway, Thomas says, I think the whole shovel thing is just Lynch loving handicraft and painting. I dig it. It's relaxing.
Yeah. I never thought about it that way. That kind of makes sense in a way.
Then other people are asking, what's the worst episode of season 3? I don't know, because it's all kind of one big thing. And I got to tell you, once he becomes Dougie, till he gets out of Dougie, to this day, all those episodes kind of just blend together as one thing. I can't even tell you what happens in each episode.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah. So anyway, well, we've been going for over 3 hours today. So
wow.
We should probably wrap this up. Now,
yeah,
I know your schedule is a little busy, so we probably won't be back doing this for a little bit, but hopefully we will return, and hopefully not after 25 years. And we will continue these discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I just this has been really great, these last 3 episodes of your show, and just thanks for people watching. But yeah, basically I got a bunch of stuff going on in my life, and this is my busy season at work, and I'm trying to work on my next episode too. So yeah, so I told Cameron that just gonna take a little break, but not too long. I mean, I'm definitely up for doing this some more, and this has been super fun. I think I'm really glad we did this, because again, I was like, I'm trying to create content that I want to see, so I feel like the stuff that you and I have talked about, I mean, obviously it's biased because it's me, but this is the type of podcast that I like and shows that I like. And it's like, we're not doing 100 topics a minute, but we're doing like Lynch and filmmaking and his movies and Twin Peaks and how all that connects. And so it's been really great, and I'll be back to do more of these. But we did like 3 of these in 3 weeks or something.
We've done 4 because you were on originally, and then we've done three other ones.
Yeah. So it's only been a month or 2, and I think we got a lot of good content. I just next few weeks are just going to be madness.
Well, tell me about it, because while you're well, it's okay, because while you're doing that, I'm trying to get everything together to work on my project. So
yeah,
I'm going to be busy myself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I told you last time that I might start doing some live chats from my channel as well. So I don't even know if I'm gonna I told everybody I'm gonna do it last time, and now I'm like, I don't even know if I'm gonna have time to do that. But I think you and I should plan on doing one of these in, 2 or 3 weeks to be good, maybe a month. But
Oh,
never say,
we'll come up with more things to talk about in the meantime, because
yeah,
the news on the Twin Peaks front is rather small.
it's pretty sparse. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's amazing how much content we can discuss without having any news whatsoever. So
yeah, and a lot of this stuff, like the Laura being, killed, not part of the original story, like it's really great to just have somebody to like bounce this stuff off of, because other than that, it's just like stuff swirling around in your head that you never like can get out anywhere. Well, I'll call my sister. I'll be like, hey, what do you think of, but like I said, there's not like tons and tons of people where you can like really get in the weeds on this. So yeah, that's great.
definitely. So why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet?
TakeTheRing.com takes you to the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/TakeTheRing. Or at TakeTheRing430 at Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and working on episode 4 as we speak. So,
well, cool.
Thanks for everybody's support, and I get a lot of great comments, and I did get over 600 subscribers, so that was my goal the last time we talked. So
I lose subscribers almost every day. It's unbelievable.
Do you think? Well, that's a different discussion. So like YouTube does, like
yeah,
YouTube does. They clean up bots and things. So I don't know, but I basically promised everybody that I would start doing live streams and some other stuff. So I will try. I'm doing my best.
No, you're doing great.
Best.
You're doing great, and everybody and everybody loves you. So, so yeah, I really want to thank you for taking the time to come on these videos too, because it's been a lot of fun discussing Twin Peaks. And I gotta tell you, it's been, last year was a really hard year for me in many ways in the community, and having you come on the show and having these discussions reminds me why I love this work so much, why I love David Lynch and Mark Frost so much, why I love Twin Peaks and the whole world so much. It has, no offense, it has nothing to do with the community. It has everything to do with my personal attachment to the material itself. And sometimes when there's drama, you can kind of get lost and tie in the material with the drama, where you don't even want to think about the material anymore, because all it does is bring up bad feelings and bad memories about stuff. But you've really helped me just kind of rediscover my love for the show and the work, and I can't tell you how invaluable that has been, and so that has really helped. So I also want to say thank you very much for that.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. That's great. I have to admit, this has been a jolt to my creative juices, and there are times like, do I really want to make like another Twin Peaks video? And I'm like, well, yeah, because there's like more to talk about. And Cameron said something the other day that got my brain working. I had to go look something up, and so this stupid book right here, ladies and gentlemen, is why the Frog Moth thing. So I got the book, and so now I'm going to try to work some of this book into the next episode. And it's just a constant evolving thing. And when you have people that are out there and stimulating your noggin, it's a wonderful thing.
I agree. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. I've lost like 88 subscribers in the last like 6 months, so I'm trying to rebuild it. So any help with that would be great. Make sure to follow us and like us on Facebook and Twitter. And also, if you're interested, you can join the Queen of Hearts Facebook group. And be great to have as many people follow us on all those platforms. Oh, and I also have an Instagram for the channel as well. So, but thank you very much for not only watching these videos, but continuing to support them and support the channel. Believe me, it does not go unnoticed. Every comment, everything that you guys have done for me in this channel, I can't say enough. And I just want to say thank you very much. And I really appreciate all of you. So in the meantime, take it easy. We will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.